Oh, howdy all. Welcome to my live stream discussion where I'm going to go through the patch notes for the second time for 3.19. I did discuss this earlier on another stream on another platform, but this is going to be the YouTube version of it, which is going to be a bit better because I'll have had more time to think on things, and a few of the things that were missed I've been able to seek some clarification on. For example, I've been able to seek some clarification on what exactly the line "lightning strike no longer strikes a target twice" necessarily means. It's not a massive nerf to lightning strike, it's a rare change. It is a slight nerf, but it's a change to a spot that was very unlikely to be reproducible. Anyways, hello all and welcome along. We're going to be discussing this and also doing some discussion with chat as well. I've got the chat up on screen if you're watching this after the fact, so hopefully that will be useful. So, what are my current thoughts on this at the moment? I'm looking forward to the league a lot, and I'm also really looking forward to the transformation in the economy. So I'm a trade league player, and there's going to be an absolute overhaul of how everything works in trade. We're no longer going to be trading things in Exalts, we're going to be trading things in Divine Orbs, and we don't yet know exactly how everything's going to wash out in the end, but I'm kind of expecting Exalts and Divines to roughly swap places in trade value. So you'll see Divine Orbs around the 180 Chaos mark, maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more, and you'll see Exalted Orbs around the 12 Chaos mark, again maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more, and that means you'll be able to frivolously use Exalted Orbs on things like jewels, and you will also probably want to hoard those Divine Orbs and mostly trade with them, but occasionally use them for high-end crafting. So, let's go through the original thing, and yes, definitely rip Exalt Hoarders in Standard. I know that I've certainly have a lot of my wealth in the Sentinel League, which I am still playing, is in Exalts, and that has definitely hurt me badly. I've gone from having 100 Exalts, which could buy a lot of stuff, to having 100 Exalts, which can't really buy very much now. And it's going to be funny trying to do things like get a bunch of challenges done that may end up being things I want to buy that I'm ending up paying 20 Exalts for rather than 2 or 3. But that's the way it works. That's the way that the game goes. Apparently Divines have shot up to 80 Chaos in Sentinel already, and presumably Exalted Orbs will fall to 20 or so as well, but we'll have to see exactly what goes on. So, there is a video trailer. Now, this is worth having a look at. There are two different versions of this. There's a short version and there's a long version. And the thing that's worth a look on with this, there's a couple of things that are mentioned in them where Chris Wilson talks about some of the features of the expansion. I just want to go through the high-level overview first here, because I think that that's the best option. And do keep in mind that at the moment you can still vendor a 6-link for a Divine Orb. That is going to change. Vendoring a 6-link is going to give 20 fusings in the future, but that is not effective until 3.19 actually lands. So, Path of Exile, Lake of Kalandra. You may recognize Kalandra from the infamous Mirror of Kalandra. Path of Exile's not quite most valuable item, but at least that's what they're calling it here. The Lake of Kalandra expansion explores the identity of this iconic character and allows you a taste of her power. Our August expansion contains the Kalandra Challenge League, improvements to the Atlas endgame. I really like some of this and has been a bit under-talked so far. 4 new gems, 14 new uniques, 100 plus buffed existing uniques, revamps to Harvest Beyond Arch Nemesis, a variety of balance changes, and much, much more. I'm definitely with Julio on that. The change to Juggernaut Armor applying to elemental damage at 8% of its value is much better than it looks. So in the Kalandra Challenge League, you'll travel to the Mirrored Lake that granted Kalandra her powers of duplication. So I'd always thought of Kalandra as being like a major god in Rayclast. That is probably wrong. It may be that she was a mortal that has, developed eternal life because she's clearly been around a long time, influencing Rayclast. But the lake manifests reflections of Rayclast itself, which emerge from its misty surface as you approach. Fight through these dangerous encounters to uncover Kalandra's mysteries and earn true power. Yes, Mohoxidal's Machination is back. As you travel throughout Rayclast, you'll occasionally discover a mirrored tablet. You can build this up by placing reflections of dangerous encounters at specific locations, and some of these might be too much for you. Once you've assigned a reflection to every empty location on your tablet, you can open a portal to the Lake of Kalandra, which will manifest your creation for you to experience. So there's a couple of screenshots that are shown here as well. We've got this one, which just sort of shows this hexagonal grid architecture that exists. That seems to be very much a theme of this league and doesn't really tell you much else. Then there's this one, which just shows a bunch of monsters. It looks like a bunch of animated weapons fighting there. And then there's this one where there is a Harbinger encounter. So we then have some more information on exactly how this system works. Those of you that played in the Synthesis League may recognize that this is not necessarily a copy of Synthesis, but there's a bit of inspiration drawn there. So you'll see that you build your own sort of meta map, if you like, by putting together a whole bunch of things, and you can modify them in various ways. So you'll have the ability to modify the lake area, and there's a few different mechanics. We'll figure more of these out as we go. But for example, you can choose between adding packs of infested creatures, swapping a water tile with an empty tile, or a reflection of conflict, which adds lightning-themed rogue exiles. And these seem to have specific costs associated with them, and we're going to have to learn more about exactly how that works. Yes, I will be going through all the patch notes. I'm just going through the high-level overview first, and then after that, we've got the patch notes ready. Harvest, I think, will be a lot more fun to engage with. It's going to be both weaker and less trade dependent. So you can swap 2 reflections around, you can add packs of undying monsters, and you can add packs of infested creatures here. Or here, you've got difficulty 3. Now, difficulty is determined by distance from the origin via the shortest path that is just with horizontal and vertical paths, so no diagonal. And this is going to allow you to create some pretty ridiculous things if you can make a very long path. Now, I don't know how much this difficulty is going to impact things. I'm just going to start with the assumption that it's +1 tier, and then we will learn how right or wrong that is over time. So I'll figure all of that out as we go further through. Yes, Harvest will definitely no longer give you fear of missing out. You can just fight the Harvest monsters, grab the loot, i.e. the crafting credit, and then engage with it at your leisure, rather than having to deal with it right then and there. We also have this thing here, which is a mirrored tablet. Now, this is one of the various itemized versions of these Lake of Kalandra zones. So this is something that you can then put aside and do later. So Reflection of the Breach, that's going to obviously be something related to Breach. Reflection of Beyond, Essence, Abyss. We'll figure out what these all are, but Reflection of the Tempest is interesting. We'll be able to access Tempests in here. Tempests were a mechanic that have some nasty surprises if you're not used to them. I think that's something that will give people a real shock. Now we get to the crazy stuff when we talk about rewards. So alongside the rewards from each encounter, i.e. the monsters that you kill, the lake can manifest new ways to create rare items. Reflecting Mist will create a pair of rings or amulets, which are reflections of each other. On one of them, half the properties are magnified in intensity, with the other half negated to hinder you. The other item has the opposite set of mods negated, and you can only take one of these with you. In the lake's late endgame, you may bring your own rings and amulets to the mist. It will magnify, distort, and reflect them in a similar way, providing access to previously unattainable power on rare items. Now, what we're going to see here, the thing that is going to be absolutely nuts, especially with the changes to Harvest, this will be more accessible than in the past. You will be able to get items. If you find an item that's got the Exalters mod, so Exalters is +1 to the level of all skill gems, and then you can use Harvest to force onto it via various means a second +1 modifier. You can then potentially double or nothing that, and well, double or negative double it. So this is going to provide a bunch of crazy stuff. Someone's mentioning in chat that it is a buff to Omniscience. Yes, the highest end stuff you could make with this would be ridiculously good with Omniscience. So Soul Heart here, this is one that is very much aspirational endgame gear, even though it's got that minus 57% to damage over time multiplier, and also 57% reduced global critical strike chance. Those two mods are terrible. Obviously those mods are awful, but the thing with them is that actually you can sort of get away with that, because those are mods that won't necessarily matter to every build. Then you've got 189 life. Yeah, you got minus 109 mana, that sucks. You've got 92 to lightning resistance, which you've got to get somewhere. But then you've got the big one, +2 to the level of all fire skill gems. I do definitely think that Omniscience and Rings are going to be significant here. Now, a few things that you need to know with these cannot be influence items. So they're going to be classic items, and it seems like the mods are about double normal strength, but 50% are positive, 50% are negative. Someone's pointing out in chat that in niche situations where negatives are desirable, this could be absolutely nuts, and that is true. You will get some of those with Doriani's Prototype. Doriani's Prototype is a unique chess piece that is going to be ridiculous because you can stack a massive amount of negative lightning resistance on this and then sort of reflect that to all nearby enemies. You'll notice that the other version of Soul Heart has the opposite mods. So where it's positive on the left version, it's negative on the right version, and vice versa. So -2 to level of all fire skill gems, whereas this one is +2. One question that's getting asked a lot, what happens if a skill gem goes below level 1 with this? It stays level 1. Next we have another example here, which is just a general good stuff ring. It's got a massive amount of life on it, reduced mana regeneration rate of 105%, aka really, really bad news. You have to have some of the reverse of that stat, otherwise you're just not going to function. But you've got a massive amount of elemental damage with attack skills there, and a massive amount of life for a ring. Then you have the reverse version. Notice that these don't seem to be able to be catalyzed here, but it may be that you can submit an item. Now this is where you bring your own items to the mist. You can submit an item that is catalyzed. Next we have an interesting different base. This is something that's different here. This is the Dusk Ring. If it is in your left ring slot, 15% reduced skill effect duration. If it's in your right ring slot, 15% increased. This is kind of cool because it's a lot of flexibility. Reduced cold damage, reduced energy shield, and then you're gaining some mana, some cold resistance, and some accuracy. This item isn't very good, but neither is its negation. Unless there's some shenanigans you can pull with negative accuracy rating that I'm not aware of. I don't think there are, but there's a bunch of stuff there. Definitely, Doriani's Prototype is looking like it's an interesting thing. Someone's asking, are these rings permanent slots? These are just items that you can loot, use, and then either discard or trade away when you finish with them, when you get something better. The transformation though, when you submit your own item, so if you were to submit a +1 all skills, +1 fire skills gem, fire skill gem ring amulet, hoping to get +2/+2 back, which could presumably happen, then at that point you are giving up your item. So you're giving up your input into that craft is a +2 fire skills amulet, and you might get a +4 one back. You might get a +0, where they're both opposite to each other. It is worth saying there's a number of changes to unique items, and I do agree with Meister Maikar's comment in chat that Doriani's Prototype is going to be crazily expensive potentially. And it's being asked, is this jewelry only? Yes, it seems not just to be jewelry only, but specifically rings and amulets. It doesn't seem like there's anything about belts for this, so I think that this is rings and amulets only. How will this work with +1 power charges? +1 power charges will be an implicit on rings at the moment, and it doesn't seem like the implicits are getting scaled. So the implicit on this 12% to cold and lightning resistances is within normal limits. Unless you're asking about items that were produced using recombinators that grant +1 to the maximum level, to the maximum number of power charges as an explicit mod, those won't be able to be put into this because they won't exist in this league. And also there's the question of items that have, how else do you get that? I'm trying to think if there's any other way you can get plus power charges. Oh yeah, you can get minimum power charges. I assume minimum power charges will go to +2. And interestingly, that would be the sort of mod that would be really strong with this. So there is a benchcraft that grants +1 minimum power charges. You could make that into +2 minimum power charges this way, I think. And even if it turns out that it goes negative, well, what do you care if you've got -2 minimum power charges? That should be fine. So really interesting things here. But yeah, and that's a good point. Synthesized rings can't go into this mist anyway. So that's a very good point from chat there, from Nate. The next thing that's teased here is the Atlas Memories system. This is really, really, really interesting. This is something that's quite different, and essentially this lets you borrow someone else's juiced Atlas. So imagine a situation where you've got your Atlas set up in a way that has absolutely no breach on it, but then you find an item that lets you run a few maps as though you had a super breach-oriented Atlas. That's what these are. These are something that Chris Wilson was very clear are rare, rare, rare. Now these are also going to be something that are tradable, and that will be in the core game. So this is not a Kalandra League thing exclusive item. This is something you'll be able to find in the core game as well. And these are something that there's a bit more on in the actual video, in the longer video that Chris Wilson put out. But these will allow you to encounter like a massively crazy Harbinger encounter. Now you will apply these, and they will apply to one map on your atlas, but then also there'll be a number of sequels to it that will apply in other maps on your atlas, mostly going upwards. So I guess the core thing here is that it's like being able to explore other types of atlas setups. The other thing that's really interesting, Nico's Memory of Demonic Onslaught here, areas are breached. What this means is that the entire zone is a breach. So none of this, you tap a breach and then it's open for a little while. Instead, the whole zone is full of breach monsters. So that's something that's really significant. Where are the rewards in memories is being asked by Maester. I believe they just drop from the monsters you kill. I think that's the situation. I'm expecting that these will be something like finding one of these will be like finding a packet of 4 scarabs, like maybe gilded, maybe winged. I will have to find out exactly how that works. So this will be a pretty substantial change. Yeah, Flotty, I think there's a lot of good stuff in this. I've been pretty happy with the last couple, to be honest. I don't feel I've had a dud league since Harvest, really. I don't know if you can put breach rings into the Mirror Crangler. We'll have to find that out. I don't think you're going to want to do it very often. There's a chest in memories. Okay, thanks, Exalt. There's 4 new gems. So one of these is Alchemist Mark. This is something that is a mark skill, and it causes the strongest ignite on the enemy to transfer to damage on the ground. Likewise, to do the same with the strongest individual poison on the enemy. Really want to test this out, but we'll have to find out the exact numbers on it. That's something that we'll get to play around with in time. And it can create ground effects no more than once each second. Additionally, it causes some flask recovery as well. Then there's Galvanic Field. Now, these are some complicated gems. There are 3 complicated gems that all sort of work together here, and they're all lightning/shock themed. So Galvanic Field is first. It applies a buff that boosts your chance to shock. When you shock an enemy while you have this buff, it creates a field of energy attached to the shocked enemy for a duration which damages it and other nearby enemies with beams of lightning. So essentially, any monster that you've shocked while you've got this buff starts radiating its own arcs. This does not seem to do very much damage. Its effectiveness of added damage is 70%, but I expect it will propagate pretty well. At least it sounds that way. And then additionally, the strength of the field depends upon the magnitude of the shock affecting the enemy when it was created. So this one's intriguing. I want to see how this feels in play. The numbers look bad for the moment, but I'm willing to stay flexible on this and give it a bit of an experiment with it. Pavlov, I did not actually get around to playing that. That was an idea I had, but that was not an Ignite build, the Deadeye that I had in mind. The Deadeye was a hit-based build. It was going to use Leadership's Price, so it was going to have Scourge instead. Next we have Lightning Conduit. Now this has a bit better damage, well a lot better damage, 220% effectiveness of added damage and just much higher numbers. And this is intriguing in that it's got lightning strikes all shocked enemies around a targeted location, then consumes the shocks that are on those enemies. Shocks can't expire on those enemies while you're casting this spell, and it cannot be supported by Spell Cascade or Unleash. Now this spell's cast time is added to its cooldown if it is triggered, so that's a pretty big deal, and that's going to stop you from spamming this like crazy. I think that that's been done to prevent any sort of shenanigans with Lightning Tendrils and cast while channeling. 10% more damage with hits per 5% shock effect on enemy is a big deal, especially with all the things that let you really scale up your shock effectiveness here. So I think there's a lot of different things going on with the shock archetype that they're trying to put together here. And finally, you've got Overcharge Support. Now, Overcharge Support is for Thunder Fist. Thunder Fist are those gloves that add a bunch of extra lightning damage to spells and attacks. They are getting buffed to the moon in this patch, like really to the moon. And Overcharge with Shock Nova go into Thunder Fist, and suddenly your Thunder Fist deals tremendous damage. And sorry, not your Thunder Fist, your Shock Nova. It always shocks anyway, and it's just going to shock as though it's dealing 500% more damage, even though you've got 25% less, and this is replacing something that might have dealt some damage. That's Overcharge. I think that this is going to be a widely used utility setup. Thunder Fist does gloves on a lot of builds that can spare the glove slot, that don't have something super build defining there, and then this combination looks really good. I do think it's worth saying that Shock Nova though is like people are saying it always shocks. It always shocks if you hit with the right part of it. So Shock Nova I think has like an Eye of the Storm that doesn't always shock. Then it's got the Ring proper, which does always shock. Then it's got the areas that miss it. So think of it as being like Mana Siphoner, the Arch Nemesis mod. There's a safe area in the middle, except it's not completely safe. There'll be some damage. Bunch of questions about unique items in chat at the moment. So we've got the question of, is Impulsor likely to be more expensive in future leagues? I think it's possible this league, just because this lightning stuff is new. I think Impulsor is a pretty rare item, and there's a lot of changes happening to unique items in general. So we're going to have to see that thing. I think that, yeah, Impulsor could be quite expensive. Like, it might be 5 Divine Orbs on day one. And when I'm saying 5 Divine Orbs, that might be a cheap price at the moment, but 5 Divine Orbs is what you used to think of as 5 Exalts. And we'll get to that one in a bit too. A bunch of unique items have been changed and added. So Soul Ascension is really cool. This is Uber Duber Elder, I believe. And I believe that this is Zizaran's design, which is something that he won the right to commission after he won one of the recent, or he came top 7 in one of the recent race events. And this is fantastic. It grants you a Soul Eater stack when you hit a unique enemy at most once per second, and you lose one of these souls every 3 seconds when no unique enemy is in your presence. So this is something that's going to allow you to gain a tremendous amount of stacking attack and cast speed against big bosses. I think this is going to be really fantastic to see, and we will see how it goes. Mihoy Minoy is asking about the Scourge monsters. So for anyone that didn't see the live stream, because you haven't gotten to this yet, the Beyond monsters that spawn are being completely replaced by Scourge monsters. And yes, I do think that they're going to be dangerous early on. Beyond is going to be a lot more dangerous than it's been in the past early on, but that's mostly because players have gotten familiar with Beyond. Also, all of the existing Beyond monsters are just basically going away. Some of them will be missed. Abaxoth was an interesting fight when he came up, but the rest of them really won't be. And they just got spammed so much all the time. Ghost Wraith is next. 50% of maximum life converted to Energy Shield is a huge deal. This allows you early in the game to start a character as an Energy Shield oriented character. You've got a huge amount of Chaos Resistance. This is like simultaneously an endgame chest and something you can use from early on. Really like this. I think it's a fascinating design. One thing to note is that if you do get a Ghost Wraith early, it may not be able to be 6-linked without the crafting bench. Well, 6-socketed without the crafting bench. Yeah, the Last to Die was a cool character, hey. Nycta's Lantern is next. This is a complete overhaul as well. This is getting simplified a lot. Instead of having the mixture of spellcasting and attack stats it used to have, now it's just, here's a bunch of damage on this weapon. Oh, by the way, Battle Mage. Really simplifies it, makes it much easier to grok what it does at first sight, and it is basically a physical, adds a lot of physical damage and fire damage to your spells. Is it great? I think it's solid. I don't think it's great, but there will be some skills that this is good for. It's going to come down to the specifics of the numbers. Next we have Malachi's Simula. This I think is actually worse than it used to be. All of the faded uniques have been removed, and sometimes the new version of the unique that's replacing both the old version and the faded version is very similar to the old faded version. Sometimes it's not. This one has spells have a 20% chance to deal double damage, which is powerful, but I'd rather just have the ability to use auras properly. Blood Magic as a keystone is too big a drawback. Malachi's Simula was already pretty bad, but I don't think this is any good. At least that's my opinion. I could be wrong on that. 1,000 Ribbons is just getting numerical increases, and they're pretty substantial. This is now much better as a leveling item than it used to be, and you're definitely going to want to 4-link this if you get it, maybe even 5-link it, but I don't think it's going to be something you'll want to use into the endgame. Now, you'll notice here that this is just the familiar old Hands of the High Templar, except that it's got the special background on it. They're making it so that there is a new unique mechanic that allows you to get some of these shiny relic versions of existing Pinnacle mods, Pinnacle boss items, and they will just be there for bling. And whilst Chris Wilson loves this sort of bling item, the player base generally don't, and they don't tend to be worth much more than the normal version of the item. But all of the Pinnacle bosses, all the Pinnacle Atlas bosses, and things like, including things like Cirrus, their drops will be available in this format. Finally, we have a new unique map. The Tower of Ordeals, engraved Ultimatum. This is where you get to fight the Trial Master, and so this is something, the partial rework to Ultimatum. This is a condensing of what existed in 3.14, and it's not a complete reintroduction of Ultimatum. It's a reintroduction of it in part. Of note, this appears to be a fragment-based map, similar to say a Shaper set, and you'll get pieces of it from the various endgame Vaal-themed content. However, we don't know that for certain. If it is endgame-themed content, I really hope that Doriani's Machinarium is not in it, because that's just going to ruin things. If Doriani's Machinarium is needed to make a Tower of Ordeals, then that's going to just end up with people having a really, really bad day. Chris Wheaton, we've got another person whose first name is Chris, their last name starts with W and ends in ON, and they're saying they love the foils. Now, that's not Krilson himself, or at least if it's not Krilson, if it is Krilson, it's someone who is masquerading as someone else. But it's good to see they do have their fans. It's just that they don't seem to be enough fans of them usually to keep them worth anything. Collectors don't usually go all in on them. Hey, Tanero, thank you. So let's have another look at... So let's keep going down and we'll have a look-see here, and you'll see that there's some overhauls of existing leagues. So the leagues that were overhauled, there were 3 of them that we knew were coming, and everyone thought Ultimatum was one. Well, Ultimatum sort of is as well, but it's Arch Nemesis, Beyond, and Harvest are the 3 that they're changing. Arch Nemesis, their goal is to make it so that you encounter less Arch Nemesis monsters. The ones you do encounter, you want to fight. Let's see if that actually works or not, but that's the goal that they have. Next, you have the situation... next you have the changes that are being made to Beyond. So all of the Beyond monsters, we discussed this before, are being replaced by the Scourge monsters. You'll only ever encounter one Beyond boss, aka Scourge boss, in a time, and they will be found in the once per map. That you'll find those bosses once you've killed a certain number of monsters. After that, there's Harvest. Harvest is being totally overhauled so that you'll get tradable currency instead, and those will be something that you'll be able to compile. I haven't gotten to that yet, Nathan. Nathan is asking in chat if I have discussed the Divine to Exalt change, except to say that I'm looking forward to a new economy. That's going to be really interesting to see. People are saying that this is the end of the Forbidden Trove trade Discord. I don't think that's true at all. People will still want to do a bunch of trades that require trust. Harvest is the biggest part of that, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't that. And the people that do trust-based trading will still use TFT because TFT is so good at dealing with scammers. And so that's going to still be the case. Likewise, various services will still be done through TFT as well. So that's still going to continue to exist and still be a big part of trade leagues, but it will be less essential to Harvest. Harvest also is getting a number of other changes and some nerfs to augments. So augments will be much more available than they are now, but they're being changed to be like Ashling. They're nerf. They are a null then augment. So it's an annul random. I haven't seen any discussion of changes to bulk trading, Chilchuck. Nothing that I've seen there at all. So, Diego, no, there's no apparent changes to reservation, other than the one that we already knew from the nerf. Yeah, there'll still be a lot of uses for TFT. I think the main use for it will be in the future will be people doing bulk trades. So, for instance, if you've got Bob who loves heist and you've got Alice who hates it, Alice maps, she gets a whole bunch of deception contracts. She jumps on TFT, says, "Hey, I've got 100 deception contracts. Want to sell for 8 divine orbs." And then Bob goes, "Hey, yoink, I'll take them." And so that's a big thing. And where do I go to see this, Nasaho? This is pathofexile.com/Kalandra. I think I can link that in chat. Let me just see if I can figure out how to do that. There you go. Yeah, so that's the link in question. So yeah, TFT will continue to be a big deal for people in Trade League. And I think that it's less essential for Harvest, but because of the way trade works in the game, people will still want to use it. TFT protects from scammers better than anything else does. Will anyone be heisting with all the new content? I think people will be. TFT has less scamming than anything else in the game. They're so good at dealing with scammers that even though there's the odd scam, and there were a few actually worse than usual in 3.18. 3.18 got pretty bad with scamming in TFT, but TFT are very good at dealing with them in a way that the core game isn't. There is no way that people who are veteran players would use in-game chat channels when they've got the option of TFT. It's it's much better. Will Arch Nemesis changes make rares and magics tougher? I think it will mostly be invisible. Like, the changes that have happened to Arch Nemesis over time pretty much nerfed them into the ground. Like, they're now weaker than the mods that predated them. And Minosh, no, I mean, I use TFT. I'm reasonably content with them as a user, but I don't have any relationship with them. I'm not part of their guild or anything like that. Yeah, there was a bunch of theft earlier this league. So what happened with the thefts on TFT is worth going into here. A number of people believe, like, there was a story that was being spread, and this was a credible rumor, although it turned out to be false. That there was a credible rumor that one of the founders of TFT was basically scamming people who were listing items for mirror service. Now, this ended up not being true, but it meant that a bunch of people were like, okay, this is the death knell of TFT. TFT is dying. I've got an exalted reputation. I'm just going to cash out, and I'm just going to scam as much as I can because this reputation is no longer worth anything to me. And so that led to a whole bunch of scams. As well as that, some very smart and cunning person figured out a way to scam the harvest double or nothing harvest thing for divination cards. Someone figured out how to scam very convincingly with that. What they did was they just made a whole bunch of videos of themselves putting 1, 2, 3, and 4 House of Mirrors into it. If anyone gave them a card that wasn't House of Mirrors, then they just did the thing properly. But if they were given a House of Mirrors, then they stole it, and they played a video of them putting that number of House of Mirrors in and then getting nothing back. So that was the divination card scam. That was really bad. They have changed a bunch of policies to prevent that happening again, but it was really, really bad. Then there was... So TFT had a bunch of people scamming this league more than they've had in the past, and then that led a bunch of people to decide, all right, I'm never going to use TFT again. I'm just going to burn all of my credibility and scam a bunch. So I think it was FS / in chat. Were you the person that got scammed out of a 10x cluster jewel in it? That was in my Discord, or was that someone else? Someone was saying that they had a 10x cluster jewel stolen from it. A whole bunch of stuff was going because people were like doing as many scams as they could before they got before it ended up being out of the way. But the rumors of TFT misusing mirror items appear to be false. At the very least, they're unfounded. The story that was going around was that TFT were allowing their guild officers to make copies of items without paying the mirror fee. and then sell them. But that doesn't seem to be true. People have dug a bit further into that, and it doesn't seem to be true. Avarice, yes, you can buy harvest crafts. You will simply be buying the currency that's used to power them. But I do think, yeah, Harvest will be pretty transformative in SSF. Like, Harvest will be the deterministic way to progress gear in SSF now, whereas at the moment it's RNG, but you get to keep trying until you get it. The new system will be like you'll be able to focus on the crafts you want to the exclusion of the others. It is more splinters, but I think these are fine. These are a perfect example of splinters. Yeah, Abraham, that's I think the thing is that people credibly believed that it was happening, even though I don't think it was, or at least I was considering it plausible at the time, but I considered it plausible but unproven. But then a bunch of the people that made those allegations retracted them after seeing a bit more evidence. Like, they realized how the items that shouldn't have been able to be created were made, and that was the key thing. Anyways, that's enough on Harvest. Let's move on at the moment and have a look at some of the other stuff. So we have the Trickster. Let's just sort of spend a little bit of time on this, but not go into it in massive depth, because the Trickster's got so much. But yeah, Avarice, so you will have unbound life force that you'll just be able to store up. You have all the crafts, you've just got to spend the life force on them. And you will need to fight the bosses for the special crafts. So the stuff that's most interesting here, Soul Drinker. This is becoming part of the Trickster Ascendancy. No longer is it the Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh exclusive thing. 2% of damage leached as energy shield is huge. 20% increased attack and cast speed while leeching is huge. Energy shield leech effects are not removed when energy shield is filled. That is huge. Like, this is fantastic. One step ahead is really interesting. Your action speed is capped below at 108% of base value. Now, I believe this makes you immune to freeze, or at least it means that freeze can only lower your action speed to 108%. I've got to check. Maybe it's movement speed. Maybe you can still get stuck in place, so you're still able to act at 108% base speed, but you can't move. I'm not sure on that. I'll need to see what that is. But nearby enemies' action speed is capped at 92%. So it's like a weak Temporal Chains Blasphemy on you. This will make Temporal Chains less valuable on a Trickster. So if you Temp Chains an enemy, let's say that your Temp Chains drops their action speed to 75%. So with one step ahead, it's going to drop it from 92% to 75%. Without one step ahead, from 100% down to 75%. So FS thinks it makes you immune to freeze. We'll have to check that one out. Nathan Jung, don't know on that. I'm assuming that it will be not all that important, because I think there's only 4 of them. So I'm assuming it will just be in the bank slots on the Harvest thing. The Scourge currency, which is coming back, Scourge currency will have its own slots in the exotic section of the currency tab, assuming you've got that. Swift Killer is getting changed to +2 frenzy charges. This is different to what it used to be. I think it used to be 1 power, 1 frenzy, wasn't it? Or something like that. Self-curse Temporal Chains is definitely better, as Mark Gray says. So that's a big, big deal. What else do we have here? We've got Polymath is really interesting. 3% more damage for each different type of mastery you have allocated. So if you've got 2 Fire Masteries and 1 Lightning Mastery, this grants you 6% more damage because you've got 2 different types of mastery. Fire is one type, Lightning is another, but even though you've got 3 masteries allocated, the 2 fires are different to each other. This is really good in the top right of the tree, though, because there's so many masteries that are different types to each other in that area. So there's lots and lots of cool stuff there. Gamain is asking, will that increased charge duration affect alternate charges? I believe it will. I believe that it will do that. Heartstopper's being buffed. 40% less damage from hits for 5 seconds, followed by 40% less damage from dots for 5 seconds. And this is a pendulum mechanic. People tend to really dislike pendulum mechanics, but I think this one's so powerful that people might still want it anyway. We're going to have to look around at that. It's something that's reasonably solid. And I think it might be better than people give it credit for. Escape Artist, I think, is completely unchanged. And Spellbreaker, you get spell suppression as a Trickster now. You get 20%, and you also get a couple of other shenanigans linked to that, so I think this is looking really solid as well. So there's a lot to play around with in the Trickster Ascendancy, but I think fundamentally Polymath is the way to go. Now, something very important to note with Polymath is that this has tremendous synergy with Harness the Void. Except where's Harness the Void, you might be asking? It's gone. Well, that is now the new thing that is replacing our old Soul Drinker as the Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh exclusive node for the Trickster. So that's what's happening with the Trickster Ascendancy. This is really a versatile Ascendancy, but I think if you can play something with Conversion, that's going to be the best ultimately, because Polymath will have so much synergy with it. Polymath is really powerful. I'm probably missing things there, but One Step Ahead is universally good. Spellbreaker, universally good. And Heartstopper, universally good. Soul Drinker, universally good. So Polymath is really strong. It's just looking like a solid all-around Ascendancy. Chillchuck, yeah, Harness the Void is being removed to be Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh exclusive. So why is Polymath good with Conversion? Because with Conversion you might have you're likely to have different mastery clusters. So that means if you're playing a heavily converted skill, you're likely to have you might have a Fire Mastery, a Cold Mastery, a Lightning Mastery that you can take, all of them being good. As well, being in the top right, you also have the Evasion and Energy Shield cluster, which is the only one on the entire tree, which you probably want to take and is also giving you another type of mastery. So I think it's quite good. World Geographer is asking, 3% more damage per mastery is much better than 3% increased. Absolutely. Your character probably has maybe 400% increased damage already. So going from 400% to 424% is only about a 6%. Is only about a 5% multiplier to your damage. Whereas going from no Polymath to 24% Polymath is a times 1.24 multiplier to all your damage. It's miles better this way. Miles, miles, miles. So there's lots of cool stuff here with the Trickster, and this will be something we can discuss a lot more when we start thinking of build ideas. Next thing that GGG announced was that ExileCon 2023 is coming. This is going to be July 29 to 30, and I am thinking I may go. We'll have to discuss that. I have to discuss that with and see how many viewers are likely to go. But that's something that, at least for me in Australia, it's somewhat expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than it is to go from somewhere like the United States or to go from somewhere like Europe. But ExileCon 2023 is happening again. This will be the second convention and should be really, really, really good. And that will also be where they're going to be giving a firm announcement date for both POE Mobile and POE 2. I am really surprised that POE Mobile wasn't announced today. I was kind of thinking that they might have gone, all right, let's just smash Diablo Immortal in the, kick Diablo Immortal while it's down by bringing out a mobile game that's good and that has a decent monetization system. But they haven't done that. It surprised me. The last things in terms of the high-level overview are just the ads for microtransactions. So you can try and speculate, I guess, if you want, on the new Kirax Vault. Speaking of Kirax Vault, I have an affiliate link in the description of this to my Nexus, which is somewhere that I can, if you wanted to buy the Kirax Vault, the current version, before it goes off sale, you can get it from there. You'll pay the same price you would from GGG, but I will get a cut from it. So that's something that you've got as an option if you want. And I will have the same for the new Kirax Vault when that comes out. I can't really predict much as to what's in there, but I'm assuming it'll be the same sort of general model of 8 different unique items, and they will all be reasonably endgame oriented uniques. Hey, Team Otto, yeah, Hawaii is somewhere that's a bit more reasonable to get to New Zealand than anywhere in the continental United States would be. Next, yeah, they've got just the advertisement for the various supporter packs. Something I want to draw to your attention, though, is the press kit here. If you want some cool POE-themed background art, definitely grab that. Just download that. It's got a whole bunch of things that I'd use to make my, thumbnails for my YouTube videos. It's a whole lot of art that's themed around 3.19. It only became available this morning, but these are really, really, really good, as they'll just have, things like desktop wallpapers. There'll be a bunch of them in there. So definitely download that. This is something GGG should talk up a bit more because it's got some cool stuff in it. Okay, that is all of the other stuff that we've gone through, but let's have a look through at the actual patch notes themselves. And that's what we're going to do, that's what we'll get to next. So there's a bunch of stuff here, some of which is more significant than others. So the Kalandra Challenge League section, we kind of covered this already. When we were talking about the high-level overview before, we've pretty much gone through everything here. This is how the Kalandra Challenge League works, and I don't want to sort of skin that cat twice, so we'll jump straight past that and go on to the new content and features section. So Galvanic Field, Lightning Conduit, Overcharge, and Alchemist Mark are the new skills, and we've already discussed those a little bit again in the high-level overview. Nothing really more to say on that. Added 14 new unique items, including Zizzarin's gloves, and one that's designed as a commission by someone from back when GGG used to sell those. And then we've got a whole bunch of divination cards, which have already all been revealed. 5 new ring base types available in Lake of Kalandra. Now, these are things that we've only seen one of so far, and that one seems pretty interesting. As far as the discussions, the level 20 versions of the new gems are already on the POE Twitter. That's good. I will definitely have a look at that one in a sec. FS. I actually have a bit of trouble finding Twitter links because I took down my Twitter because I was just spending way too much time on it 10 years or so ago. Maybe not 10 years, something like that. Like, I had an account years and years ago, and I just stopped using it because it was just such a time waster. I really should do that with Reddit as well, but Path of Exile kind of makes that impossible. And I also should probably do it with Facebook. But anyways, too much time wasted on various social media sites. But Twitter was the worst of them, so it was the one that I got rid of first. And so that means that when I go to Twitter, I then stay logged out and find it. There is a link in my Discord in the Just Chatting section. Excellent, thank you. I should also put a link to my Discord at some point during this. So let's just go to the Just Chatting and find this info. And then once we're done with that, we will then have a look at it. What do we got here? There we are. Excellent. How do I get that? Excellent. Okay, there we go. So that's the Galvanic Field first, and I will jump back to this here. So the Lightning Strike bug is not the significant one people think it is. It was apparently it's been clarified by GGG on Reddit that it's a rarely occurring bug. It's not something that happened on every attack. So it can still hit an additional time, but it won't triple hit in like in monsters. Like, mostly it came up when monsters were fleeing from you. Oh, that's a good question that was asked. Russell commenting in chat there that someone asked about the mirror ring copying an unset ring. So that unique item is cool. That's the Kalandra ring that mimics your other ring. It won't be able to socket it there. Hey, thanks, Doctor. So this is the new Galvanic Field, and what are we looking at? So it's 70% damage. Chance to shock enemies is increased. Shock duration is increased. I think that's the quality bonus. Nothing particularly exciting there. Next is Lightning Conduit. So big base damage because it's 220% of effectiveness of base damage. That's always going to translate to big damage. This skill is worth playing around with, I think. We're just got to work out how it works. I really want to see, honestly, a GGG video that shows a full map clear using this skill, extensively, and using gear that would, like comparing it to Arc. The same build with Arc. So same gear with Arc and with Lightning Conduit, just to see how good it is. And what else we got here? Overcharge is 690% more damage. That's nice. What skills have 30%? Okay, quality doesn't do much. I think quality is shock duration, which is neither here nor there. I mean, you'll take it. But 25% less damage, 690% more damage for purposes of calculating shock effect. That's around about a total of 592% base damage for shock effect. Overcharge is going to be huge, like we were saying before in Thunderfist with Shock Nova. Shock Nova overcharge in there is just going to be nuts. Really, really, really nuts. Shanjack, Stormfire appears to be untouched. Yes. Yeah, Samuel, we'll have to find out on that, on how these skills work at endgame. Alchemist Mark, I think, will have some serious use at endgame. Just being able to create garbage on the ground that, based upon the strongest poison on an enemy, will be a big deal, but more universal will be the strongest ignite component. So you're saying Zizaran was commenting about Lightning Conduit with Necromancer Corpse Pact. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of cool options around. It's going to take a while to work out how to use these skills because they're not straightforward. They don't just hit an enemy by itself. They're something that requires a little bit of working in conjunction with other stuff. So there's the Atlas Memories as a core new game mechanic, which were discussed a little bit when we went through the high level overview. The Pinnacle Uniques, the Trial Master, Reflective Oil is being added, which can be used to anoint mirrored items. Obviously useful in this league so that you don't have to do without particularly ring anoints, but also amulet anoints. And when you are... Oh yeah, this is just an improvement in how it works when you're buying items from a vendor or using a crafting bench. And then we have the league content reworks. Good question there. Does any of these make me change my league start plans? I hadn't made my league start plans yet. I had a couple of things in mind. Depending on the mood I'm in, I may decide that I want to just make melee work to prove people wrong that it can't be worked. So that's an option. And I may also go with something else. So just thinking on that. Trickster's looking impressive, and Trickster has a lot of stuff going for it. I may want to try and make the Frostblink Ignite setup work as well that we were discussing on my community post section. So that's another option that's there too. There's just a lot of things that can be done. We'll work on that. I usually aim to think on my league starter. This time next week I want to have it planned. But today plus 6 days, so right now plus 6 days, which for me is 1:30 in the afternoon on Thursday before league start. That time is when I want to have worked out what I'm on a league start. And Trickster Lightning Strike, yeah, I can see that working. I can see Trickster having the support for Lightning Strike. You pick up a lot of different masteries on Lightning Strike. And Trickster's got a fair few defenses as well, so that you can survive being up close and personal. I can see that working. So the biggest change they're making with Arch Nemesis relates to rare and magic monsters in general. They're making rare monsters much less frequent in some of the encounters that spam heaps of them. And so they're saying here that there's 6 to 8 times as many rare monsters in some league content. Cough, cough, Ultimatum, cough, cough, Heist. And now that they're making the mods a little bit more... variable, you will start to see them be a little bit less frequently spawned there. So less rare monsters will spawn. They'll be individually a little bit nastier than some of the weaker ones are now. So they're going to be removing 1 mod rares from maps, but they're also substantially upgrading the rewards for Arch Nemesis modifiers. This is not all of the Arch Nemesis modifiers, it's the ones that are at the nastier end. These are going to correlate to increased item drop bonuses and powerful modifiers that show up in the 3rd and 4th slot, and they will use a reward conversion system that's similar to what we had during 3.17, but not exactly the same. So I actually think Kotakot is saying that they think that Headhunter Replica will be better than normal version. I actually think the other way around. I think this is the death knell for Replica Headhunter. I can't see myself wanting to equip this at the moment. Yeah, we did show that resistance when we were going through the the sort of key features overview. So there's also fewer rare monsters being spawned in some of the boss encounters. Interestingly, this does not include the Desert Spring map boss, which spawns a lot of rare monsters. That said, these are all once per league bosses usually. Lower the number of rare monsters spawned in Doriani's Machinarium, just in case anyone really cares. Like that map is so rarely done. Unless there's some changes to it, I can't see this being something that matters very much. Assembled Metamorphs no longer spawn minions at various thresholds. I will miss those. I'll miss those for the chance to refill flasks, to refill Vaal Souls. Those I will miss. And also for purposes of keeping some ridiculous Ignite shenanigans alive sometimes. In some past leagues, when I've played Ignite, you'll ignite the trash monsters, they'll corpse explode. That will cause a corpse explosion ignite, i.e. a massive ignite. On the rare monsters, they will corpse explode ignite, hitting the metamorph, and then the metamorph will spawn new monsters. They will immediately catch on fire from ignite proliferation, and then you'll just have this cascade of deaths. It's one of those super satisfying things that is going away. Ritual's interaction with rare monsters is getting nerfed a little bit. And then we've got the, as well as that, some of the various things that cause additional monsters to spawn are being nerfed. Now, Abyssal Army on the Atlas passive tree is being nerfed to 50% increased monsters. This is actually a pretty big deal. This is going to make, even though it's going to make Gilded and Winged Abyss Scarabs feel more impactful when you use them, because you'll get flooded with more monsters, but they'll actually be worse than they were as well, because, so it's going to be, yeah, a bit of a messy thing. Where are those skills, Habib? Let me just give you the Twitter link for them. One sec. Copy message link, and I will post that here. Habib, this is for you. This, I think that's, oh, hang on, that's, sorry, that is not the correct one. That's what I need. Sorry, this is the correct link. There you go. That's what we're after, the Twitter link. Sorry about that. So the Abyssal Army changes there are going to make Abyss Scarabs probably actually less lucrative, even though there'll be a bigger difference from the normal. Unspeakable Offensive is no longer causing Harbingers to summon 60% more minions. Again, this is the same thing. Flash Breach is getting nerfed a little bit. I think all of this is about reducing the amount of magic and rare monsters for the purposes of the Arch Nemesis changes that they're making. Campaign, rare monsters will have 1 or 2 mods. In maps, they're going to have 2 or 3, with 4 being rare. And Valley of Darkness Atlas Keystone is being nuked. It's gone. It is gone completely. And Stream of Consciousness is being moved to that location on the tree. So some of them use a reward conversion system. So if you defeat a monster with a Corruptor mod, all of its drops become corrupted. Now that is actually detrimental almost always, but some of the rarer ones will be much better. So Solaris Touched will convert all the drops to maps. Katava Touched will cause the normal items to become magic, magic to rare, rare to unique, and then you can get a whole bunch of these in both. You can get them as 3rd and 4th mods, and then in that context you will end up with some craziness. Is that a nerf to Stream of Consciousness? Don't know as yet. I have to think on that. The location. I have to check where Valley is. I think Timeless Duels. So when we get to the Divine Exalt change, one thing you have to remember is the 3-for-1 recipe exists. But I think that's going to be significant. Kirak mods I think are a bit worse than usual Media Culture. I think they're still fine, but they're a bit weaker than usual, and so that's going to have a bit of an impact on Chaos value. I think Chaos Orbs will be in lower demand this league, which is really going to transform everything. So Magic monsters have a restricted list of Arch Nemesis modifiers compared to rare monsters. Sorry, Replica Headhunter, but this still includes many monsters which can spawn threats external to monsters themselves, such as ground effects or volatile orbs. These can feel overwhelming due to magic monsters being more numerous than rares, and so we are toning down the modifiers that spawn on them, so more of them are stat-based, and when you've got, like, you'll find sometimes that there'll be packs of them that will have the same mods as each other, but basically Replica Headhunter is dead because of this. At least that's my understanding. Chillchuck's asking, what's the 3-for-1 recipe I'm talking about? 3 unique items, none of them corrupted, all with the same name. Vendor for 1 of the same unique item back. So if you vendor 3 of the Atzuri flasks, you will get back an Atzuri flask with random mods on it. And that's something that you can use in order to basically divine items. So you can divine a unique item that way if the unique item is cheap, if the unique item is expensive, or if the version you've got is special, like it's Sacred Orb Perfect or something like that, then and only then would you consider using an actual divine orb on it. So yeah, it's an alternate way of getting a divine orb, but it's not really a divine orb. It's not going to have all the utility of a divine, but it's got part of it. It'll be like a Leo Slam. A Leo Slam in the previous versions of the game has been an Exalted Orb's core functionality, but with much less ability to, with a much lower opportunity cost because it's got less overall utility. It's going to be like that. So there's a couple of name changes on Arch Nemesis modifiers, all small things, and there's been a couple of changes to block damage on Arch Nemesis mods. So that's the Arch Nemesis changes. Basically, Arch Nemesis was nerfed so hard that it basically doesn't exist now anyway, and this is not going to have much of an impact on that, really. It's still going to be the same. Still going to be much the same. Okay, so let's talk Beyond. Firstly, Chris Wilson was talking about how bad the art was on the Beyond monsters. I don't really notice that because you are usually too busy running away from their attacks to really notice how bad their art is. But he was saying that it was terrible and gave a close-up of, which one was it they gave a close-up of? Was it Nahum or was it Bamoth? I think it was Bamoth. Gave a close-up of that and it looked really terrible. Anyways, they're changing Beyond completely and they're making it so that the Scourge is completely replacing them. So summoning monsters from Beyond will now summon Scourge monsters and bosses. We've completely rebalanced the rate that Beyond monsters and bosses spawn at, so it's more appropriate for modern Path of Exile. The new Beyond monsters can occasionally drop the Scourge League's tainted currency items that allow you to modify corrupted items. Don't get too excited though, because tainted fusings are getting nerfed as well. So Beyond portals now spawn Scourge demons instead of the old Beyond bandits. Demons are now divided into 3 factions, and only one faction will spawn in a given instance. It's 15% flat chance for Beyond portals to spawn. This cannot be scaled up in the ways that you can scale up currently. And just having a look, see, something's gone wrong with my with my chat window there. What's going on with that? I've had this completely. Oh, there we go. Sorry, all. Chat on the stream chat on screen broke, which is there because that's something that will be useful for anyone that's watching this later. Unfortunately, it was broken for a few minutes there, but we've fixed it now. So I think Samuel in chat is right. The Beyond changes won't affect the average player much, but they will be a huge change for top-end juicing. So spawning a Beyond boss no longer requires killing many Beyond demons close together. Instead, once a substantial number of Beyond demons have spawned in the instance, each pack spawned grants a stacking chance for the next pack in the area to be replaced by a boss. Only one Beyond boss can spawn per instance, and once that boss is spawned, Beyond portals will no longer be able to spawn in that instance. When Beyond demons can occasionally drop tainted currencies, and Beyond bosses are guaranteed to drop multiple of them. Adjustments have been made to the outcome odds for the Tainted Orb of Fusing, Tainted Jeweler's Orb, and Tainted Mythic Orb in order for those items to be suitable for core availability, aka RIP Tainted Fusings. I don't know how bad this is going to be, but we will find out over time. This might kill Tainted Orbs of Fusing entirely, it might not. So we'll just have to play around with that. If it ends up being, say, 30% to add a link, 70% to remove it, then they'll still be far better than normal fuses. If it ends up being 5% to add, 95% to remove, then they're just going to be ruined. So we don't know yet. All tainted currency items now have slots in the exotic section of the currency stash tab. Now, one thing that's worth noting here is that tainted divine teardrops are now back as well. Tainted divine teardrops are very, very rare, and they are the ones that randomly increase the tier of some mods and decrease the tier of others. And these can do some really silly things early in a league. If you get a Tainted Divine Teardrop and you get like an influenced item, you can do some really crazy stuff with them because they can just make influenced items far better than you'd otherwise get early league. So do keep that one in mind as something to look for. Section modifiers that grant Beyond Portal chance now grant increased Beyond Mountains to pack size instead, and new Beyond monsters don't drop Scourged items. A number of changes to Atlas passive trees as well. So, we have the Harvest stuff that's going to come next. So Harvest is completely being overhauled. Instead of your Harvest, basically each monster giving you a craft, or at least having a percentage chance to give you a craft, each pack of monsters that you kill will give you some amount of various life force. When you collect a whole bunch of that, you can then spend it on whichever crafts you care about. No more is it a case of RNG, whether you get the 6-link craft or the 4-link craft or the Lightning Reforge. Instead, you will always have access to Lightning Reforge, Chaos Reforge, and so on, but they will compete with each other for the currency that you use. Tier 4 bosses are much more frequent and can drop a key to fight a Shabi, and a Shabi will grant special life force that is used for a specific set of crafts. So the precious crafts are going to require you to kill a Shabi. The non-precious crafts you can just get by killing the normal monsters. Rebalanced all harvest crafts for the new system and have removed a bunch of filler crafts and some ones with deterministic outcomes that were incredibly RNG gated before. Some crafts that can provide access to exclusive content, like the special offerings to the goddess, have been put into other locations instead. So now there are basically, you'll get a bunch of life force that you can then use when you want to. And they've also addressed the monster composition of harvest fights so that it doesn't contain too many rare monster mods and is appropriate difficulty for its rewards. In addition, the rewards for harvest now scale up with map quantity and pack size, incentivizing you to juice your maps. Previously, the crafts you received were not scaled up at all if you played a harder map. So yeah, augments are being changed to remove a mod first. That's something that was discussed in there as well. So Life Force comes in 3 different types: Primal, Wild, and Vivid, and these have spots in the currency stash tab. So that answers a question from before. Life Force can be used in the Hoarder Crafting Station, which has been reworked in your hideout. Instead of functioning as a way to store crafts for later use, it now functions like a crafting bench, just with its own currency, providing a list of every harvest craft to choose from. Each craft costs a certain amount of life force to use, and you can use them as many times as you want, as long as you've got the necessary life force. Harvest bosses are more common, and a Shabi will drop different stuff instead. She will drop crystallized life force, which is used for specific crafts. So that'll be the special ones. So yeah, basically King Exodus, that is not, it is actually like a harvest crafting bench. You'll always have access to augments as long as you've got the crystallized life force to use them. Or at least, well, they're not longer augments, they're being different. Harvest crafting options have been overhauled. Many have been rebalanced and tweaked, while others have been removed or found new homes. Harvest crafting options currently stored in Hoarder Crafting Stations will be deleted upon 3.19.0. Use them or lose them. Now, here's something I really don't like. So, dedication, gift, and tribute to the goddess. These are now going to drop from the end of the normal 75 labyrinth. I don't like this because if your character is powerful enough that you could even consider going into a dedication to the goddess labyrinth, there is no way you're in the eternal labyrinth. So people are not going to find these unless they go and painfully run content that they've got no interest in doing. So I think that's a really bad change. I think GGG should find a better spot for them. I'd much rather see a dedication to the goddess, gift, and tribute. These should drop from like random bosses, like, you know, give them to the Phoenix or something like that. That would be something that is now a miles better system. I actually quite like the Labyrinth to some extent. I just like it as something you run once. Labyrinth is there, I think, primarily, more than anything else, Labyrinth is there to hinder bots in Path of Exile. It's there because it's something that bot cheaters have not been able to figure out a way to beat very effectively. And so it's there as a way to, to make bots meaningfully weaker unless a cheating farm that's running a whole bunch of accounts actually has a person manually run all of them through the lab at some point. But yeah, I think they should drop somewhere else because this is not a good spot for it. If you get one of these when you first run lab and you don't know lab, but you manage to get through the Eternal Labyrinth, you get one of these and you've suddenly got something that's just so much harder than you can do. Kind of like if you could get a tier 16 map drop from a tier 3 map. There's a reason GGG don't do that, and I think this is just going back to that sort of design. Same thing with Infused Beachhead. If you can do Infused Beachhead at all, then tier 15 Beachhead is just boring and really doesn't have any purpose. So it does buff lab runners income, but yeah, I'm quite okay with not doing that. I think they should just change this system. I don't like this change. The Atlas Tree access is there. Yeah, that is true on the Juiced Eternal Labyrinths. So they may rise in value, but 2 of them won't. It's only Gift to the Goddess that could rise in value. The other 2 won't. Maybe the Belt one will. FS makes a good point there that we did get the Horrible Strand unique map as did drop from low tier maps, but I don't think that was ever intended. That did happen for a while. So this is a bad change here. Like with both the Tribute to the Goddess type tier stuff and the Infused Beachhead, I'd really like them to revisit that and have them drop from somewhere else. Really, they could just drop from the Conqueror tier bosses, Conqueror tier mini bosses. Yeah, and Kuz is right that the Belt one is decent, but there's enough supply for them. There's also just not that many people that are capable of running the Uber Duber labs, or at least there'll be people who could run them, but they're just underconfident about them. Lures and Infused Engineer's Orbs can no longer be obtained. Lures is going away definitely as something to deal with multi-boxing. That's going to make beasts in general. That's going to make a casual player's Ironheart missions worth a lot more. The fact that they're doing something about Krakic lures. But Infused Engineer's Orbs going away is something that I'll be a bit sad about. I wanted to research these for a bit, and it's just something I've never got around to, and now I won't be able to do. That's unfortunate. Bumper Crop is being changed. There's a bunch of little changes to harvest-specific things. This is the harvest-specific Atlas support. And this is all worth having a read of, but nothing particularly substantial. Something that people may be interested in is that Betrayal, that Leo's Exalt Slam in Betrayal is being changed. So is Leo's Divine Orb. These are being changed to various other things instead. So one of them is going to be to chrome an item 50 times, keeping the rarest color combination. That's pretty much useless. That'll be the tier 1 version. Second is to reforge the number of sockets 50 times, keeping the rarest. So it's basically 50 Jeweler's Orbs, but worse. And the top one will be to fuse an item 50 times, keeping the most linked sockets, which again is just a 50 fusing orbs, but worse. Leo is no longer someone that you want to have in research at all. Like, he's gone from marginal in research to just bad. But he was already marginal. And honestly, if they didn't make this change, he would have been bad as well. Like 50 fusings is, 50 fusings is not nothing, but it's not great either, especially given that you can't trade it. So you've got to use it on items. So we'll see what happens with everything else there, but this is not a huge deal. So here we have the biggest change of all. This is the Exalted and Divine Orb section. This has been interesting in how controversial it is, because this single-handedly eliminates all past crafting guides that are aimed at endgame. All past crafting guides are gone, and all past economy guides are gone. So this is a massive change here. Divine Orbs and Exalted Orbs have always had the same drop rate, apparently, or not always. It used to be Divine Orbs were rarer, so they've obviously changed them to be the same as each other at some point. But Exalts are much more valuable in trade because of metamods. Really, it's just because of metamods. Out of these two, we would prefer the Divine Orb effect to be rarer, so that unique items with good rolls matter more, and so that players can Exalt Slam more frequently. I like this idea. It means that picking up unique items is going to start to matter again. So instead of saying, hey, that's a piece of vendor trash on the ground, you'll instead say, hey, let's ID that because there's a 1 in 10 chance that it's valuable. And then you ID it and you go, oh, okay, no, that is just rubbish. Or you go, hey, that's a perfect roll. Excellent. I'm going to sell that and it's going to be 250 chaos now. So that's going to be a big deal. We're making 2 changes that will impact this. Firstly, we're changing the cost of crafting in metamods so that they cross Divine Orbs instead of Exalted Orbs. Secondly, we're changing the 6-link vendor SP, we're nerfing the hell out of it, so that it grants 20 fusings rather than a Divine Orb. So this is going to be a huge deal. Chillchuck in chat is saying rip Forbidden Shaco rolling. There is going to be an increase in Forbidden Shaco drop rate to compensate for this somewhat. And we will see the exact details here, but I do agree with Sebastian Holzclaw in chat that it would have been cool to see a split between them. There are 3 somewhat rare currencies, Exalts, Divines, and Annuls, and I would have liked to see them. I would have liked to see a league where the metamods were split between the 3 of them. But let's go through the things that are going to change here. This is a nerf to Ashes of the Stars. It's not a massive nerf, but it is a substantial one. It means that you're probably going to settle for 28, 29% quality and for a couple of points off perfect on the reservation as well. So that means that it's going to be a couple of points lower than it otherwise was. This is going to absolutely transform mirror crafting. Like this, for the casual player, this is not much of a difference. It just means that they can Exalt Slam gear, which they couldn't previously do, and they can't now Divine gear. But Divining gear has less of an... Divining gear improves it by less than Exalting gear does, so that's going to be less... That's not going to be all that important. Our Replica Shaco's been removed, Chillchuck. It's a legacy item now. Timeless Jewels, people keep talking about. I think that the 3-for-1 vendor recipe on those is going to be huge. So if you vendor 3 of the same and none of them are corrupt, you'll get back... Basically, it'll be like you destroy 2 and apply a Divine Orb to the 3rd one. So that's going to be done a lot with Timeless Jewels. A lot. The Divine Vessel recipe is still going to exist and is just going to be a terrible deal. It will join lots of other terrible deals in the vendor recipes. I believe that you can turn a bunch of fusing orbs into 1 elk. Would that be right? Is it? Maybe it's 3 fusings that you can turn into 1 chrome from a vendor recipe or something like that. There's a bunch of vendor recipes that are terrible, and the Divine Vessel one will continue to be in the game, but will be absolutely terrible. So let's go through all of the other things. Trade today is a mess. You do have to go D&D for a bit. 3 jewelers to 1 chrome. Thanks, Medifrag. Medifrag remembers the bad deal that I couldn't remember. So there's a bunch of scam trades that are available already from vendors, and essentially the Divine Vessel recipe is like that, except at the very start of an SSF environment, you might use it once. Just to get your core Pantheon, the one that you most want to use, done. You can do that, but you'd only ever do it once. And then you would just, over time, you'll find your Divine Vessels to get all of your alternate ones. So there's a bunch of changes here to other sources of Divine Orbs. Firstly, Veiled modifiers that cost Divine Orbs now cost Exalts or Chaos instead. So remember that it is actually an improvement for players if it goes from Divine Orbs to Exalts, because I'm expecting Divine Orbs might be 200 Chaos in the future, and Exalts maybe 10. Because Exalts do have some utility, but it's pretty limited. And a big part of that is going to come down to Harvest Reforge more likely, the availability of Harvest Reforge more likely, and the availability of Harvest Reforge an item keeping all prefixes and the suffix version thereof. Those will be things we want to check, because if those are highly available, then you'll find that people will be exalting their gear quite a bit, because you'll Reforge keeping prefixes. When you've got 3 good prefixes on an item, you'll often get only 1 suffix. If that suffix is all right, you're going to exalt it. And then you're going to say, oh, is it worth exalting again, or do I want to benchcraft instead? So there'll be a bunch of stuff there. Next, we have the Heist Trinkets that used to upgrade Regals to Divines or Chaos to Divines. These are being nerfed a little bit to be in line with the Exalt ones. Divine Orbs sold by Tujin or Ritual now cost the same as Exalts, because they were always cheaper than they should be otherwise. And then the drop rate of Forbidden Shaco, Judging Voices, Venter's Gamble, and the Risk have all been increased as a result of these changes. So they're basically saying that they expect that players will not be divining Forbidden Shaco as much, or Venter's Gamble, and so they're making the pieces that put those together much more common than they have been. How often do I expect people to slam and exalt as part of the crafting process? Much more often. How often do you divine an item in the current state of the game? So let's leave aside before today's news. How often did you apply a Divine Orb to improve an existing item that you didn't think you would use forever on a build? So you didn't think this is my endgame gear. You were thinking, oh yeah, this is just what I'm going to use for a while. That will be your attitude to using Exalts in the future. I'll be like, oh yeah, this has got 4 mods on it. I'm just going to benchcraft 1 and then I'm going to slam it. And that will be something that will get done a lot. Sephiroth will probably still drop from the same spot, which is Dominus in maps. Actually, Dominus in the Axe as well, but Dominus in maps mostly. So this is going to be pretty substantial, I think, in terms of its impact on the economy. But mostly, this is going to be, if you are a top-end power gamer, this is going to be a nerf to you, but not much. If you are a casual player that might have 500 chaos in wealth, this is going to give you more this is going to increase your character power across the league. And if you're in between, like most I think of my audience are, then this is going to be a mixed bag. You'll find things will be better, things will be worse, but everything will be new. And that'll be the really interesting thing. Divination cards have been mentioned a couple of times. There is only one divination card for divines at the moment, the Sephiroth, which drops from Dominus, and there's no indication of any new ones coming this patch. So that means that there's going to be, like, divine orbs will be all or nothing. Like, when you get one, it'll be a huge drop, and then there's no way to really work towards your next divine orb other than trade. Divine Lucky from Harvest, we'll have to find out. I think we'll probably still have it. I got a feeling that they want divine orbs to be the only solution on unique items, but that they may provide other alternatives on rares. And, well, yeah, Chill Chuck, like, the thing with the Exalt cards is that the you must have deleted it yourself. His comment was just about the Brothers Stash being no longer as exciting, but I think you got to say that all of the divination cards for Exalts have been the most impactful cards in the game for a period, other than the Mage Blood and Headhunter ones. So now it'll be something else's turn to shine. I'm really thinking this will be interesting. I do think we will start seeing, Jonathan's comment in chat that there'll be a spike in cards for Divines getting added. I do think that will happen, yeah. We will start seeing more and more cards for Divine Orbs getting added to the game. Okay, so we have the rebalance of uniques. I do not want to go through every single line of this, partly because this is going to take too long. Even though this stream is not intended to be something that goes like that, I don't have a specific set finish time or anything. I wasn't intending to make it a 4-hour stream either, and that's going to be a little while. Sephiroth is more like the scout than anything else, yeah. So, going through here, we've got a number of items that are becoming unique. Cheap Construction, Replica Cheap Construction, Chitis's Needle, Glitter Disc, Izaro's Dilemma, Izaro's Turmoil, Rotting Legion, Spine of the First Claimant, The Peregrine, Viper's Scales, and World Carver are all going Legacy. And I don't really see why, although I don't think anyone's going to really mind for most of those either. So a bunch of them are getting changed there. Yeah, I'll have a look at Clay Shaper when we get to it, and Montragals as well when we get to it. So just having a look here, the Elbron's Warpath is getting a change of identity. It's now making your skeleton warriors permanent, and it's no longer giving +1 skeletons, so it's no longer a DPS boost. Instead of a DPS boost, it is a quality of life change. This is an interesting change, and I don't know whether it's necessarily better or worse. It's just something that is different. Allelopathy, someone mentioned it in chat. I don't get why this is being nerfed. It was okay. It wasn't great. Don't see why it needs any changes to it. But we'll jump through to things that are a bit more exciting. The Anvil is getting a big buff to block. I don't know whether people are going to want to equip it or not, but it's meaningfully better than it used to be. Very, very good point from Russell Rutherford. Cheap Construction is because of Sunblast getting a massive overhaul. That's getting changed a lot. So this one's at the interesting end, and it's just going to be better, as is Apep's Rage. These are just getting straight up buffs that are going to be quite a bit better than they used to be. Now, Asnath's Mark threw me, but this is just basically the replacement of an old item with its faded version. So the old version of Asnath's Mark is no longer going to exist. The faded version will. We'll be replacing it. The faded version of that is pretty rare, I believe. So that's going to be something that's not going to show up all that much. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense what people are saying about Allopathy. So it's going to be a leveling item rather than an endgame one. That makes a lot more... yeah. Okay, that makes some sense. That explains what they're doing. I was a bit curious as to what was going on there, but yeah, that makes sense. Now, the Ashcaller is going to... is just sort of... getting a change that's sort of doubling down on its main focus. A lot of things are doing this. They're doubling down on their main focus. Ashrend is interesting here. This is gaining 75 to 150% increased physical damage with ranged weapons. This is a massive range, but it's also a massive number at the top end. 150% increased physical damage with ranged weapons is a big deal. And this is quite different to what it used to do, where it supported your gems with added fire. But it no longer provides any life at all. It's very much a glass cannon-y type physical damage build setup, and I like it. I think it's an interesting idea. It's something different, and most importantly, you can have your main skill in your bow with it. Beast First Shore is next, and it's getting a number of little changes to it, but nothing particularly impressive. Bitter Dream was already discussed. This is basically a +2 tabular setup. This is like a +2 tabular. It's really, really good. It doesn't work on every gem, but it's really good when it does work. And Replica Bitter Dream is doing the same thing, except it's for a different type of setup. So Replica Bitter Dream is going to be something that you'll want to use on gems that can do all 3 types of elemental damage, which are pretty rare. But if you are doing all 3 types of elemental damage, you're going to get some pretty amazing results out of this. Regular Bitter Dream on cold damage setups. Okay, underwhelming change, underwhelming change, underwhelming change, underwhelming change. Bringer of Rain is something that is going to bring back some of its past glory, possibly. Just much higher stats than it used to have. The big thing here is the increase to top-end maximum life. If this is Divine Well, and that's a bigger deal now than it used to be, but if it's Divine Well, it now has enough maximum life that it doesn't feel quite as terrible to be using the Bringer of Rain, and therefore missing out on your life that you would have got on a chest, life and defenses from a chest. Okay, next thing, we discussed Bronze Life already. That was something that jumped out at me as really interesting. Chalice of Horrors is one that's kind of cool. So this is losing a bunch of its defensive stats. Instead, it's going to gain the ability to inflict decay on enemies you curse with Hex or Mark skills, dealing 700 chaos damage per second for 8 seconds. This is not a lot of damage, but it will be enough potentially to kill a lot of the weakest trash mobs. And whilst I don't know that this is great, it's certainly something a little bit interesting. But most interesting here is +3 to the level of socketed curse gems. That is really significant on Despair specifically. Despair scales a lot with curse gem level, and so maybe you will see people using Chalice of Horrors in conjunction with Despair Curse. And then, of course, Despair means that the chaos damage per second is scaled up as well, and this is interesting. There's an update for Elbrons and Sunblast at the bottom. That's good to know as well. Clay Shaper, someone asked to discuss this, so let's have a look at this thing here. This is now causing your golems to do massive amounts of added physical attack damage. So this is something that's being set up for the Stone Golem and for the Carrion Golem. Stone Golem and Carrion Golem can do a fair bit of physical damage with attacks, and this is going to make it a lot better. And I'm assuming that this is competing with, what, a +2 Convoking one, I'm guessing. And yeah, I just got to see whether it's good or not. This will be one for POB to determine whether it's good or not, but it looks like one that's that looks like is interesting. Jonathan, that's not clear yet. That's not clear yet. Chilchuck's raising that Brine King's Helm is used to be a solid choice to get cheaply. It's also a very rare item. So Brine King's Helm is one of the rarest uniques in the game. It's not in much demand because it's just, like, it's solid, but it's not spectacular. But because people don't really want it that much, it's not that available. All uniques are having an across-the-board decrease in drop rate, and so I'm not going to recommend Brine King's Crown as an item to get yourself started, because it might just be that there's not very many of them on the first day of the league at all. Hey, Firebloom, this is live. This is live. This is me streaming this time. I streamed over on Twitch earlier this morning, and now I'm streaming here because there's just a different audience. I get different audiences there and here. So yeah, there are more mods per rare slightly, but it's not going to be as much as it was on day 1 of 3.18. Yeah, I do think well-rolled uniques will be expensive this league. It depends on the item, and remember that you can vendor 3 copies of the same unique to get back a random version of it. So we'll have to have a look at exactly how that works out. Cloak of Flame was discussed earlier in a previous video. Corpse Walker wasn't too exciting. Covenant is a big deal. Okay, so this is going from level 15 added chaos to level 29 that Socketed Gems is supported by. Level 29 added chaos is a big deal. Like, that's so much more damage than level 15. This is going to really make builds do something interesting with various chaos hit skills. So maybe it'll be Forbidden Rite, maybe it'll be something else, but the Covenant's going to do some silly stuff with it. And skills gain a base life cost equal to 100% of base mana cost. I don't know whether this replaces the mana cost or is supplemental to it. I read that as supplemental. So I read that as if the base mana cost of the gem is 40 mana, then now it's got a base cost of 40 life and 40 mana. So that is the thing that's going to be tough to work out exactly how that works. But whatever the case, level 29 added chaos is a lot of damage. Lot of damage. Okay, that's just changing to the old version of Crown of Thorns. Like, that's the faded version of it. And Doresso's Courage was sort of doubling down on an interesting playstyle where you only really need to cap one of the blocks. So if you block attack damage, if you cap attack block and don't cap spell block, or if you cap spell block and don't cap attack block, Doresso's Courage will make up for the other one, just not 100% uptime. And I quite like this design, and I think it's something worth playing around with. Really need to look into it. Enraged Monkey, no. Relikesh's Impatience lost all synergies with Discharge. Absolutely everything is gone. Yeah, Metafrag, you're right. I think level 6 Awakened Added Chaos damage would be same as level 27. But then level 6 Awakened Added Chaos also has +1 gems. So yeah, Doresso's Courage is interesting here, and that's something that I like the change that's been made. Death's Harp is picking up +2 arrows. Probably won't be good enough, but it's still interesting. Death Rush is being overhauled entirely. This is basically no longer the item it used to be. You can say the old item's gone legacy and a new item's being created, just without new art. And this is going to give you 5% recover of life on kill, which is a huge deal. And then it says gain adrenaline 3 seconds on kill. I believe that adrenaline has a 20-second cooldown. So this means you'll have adrenaline not 15% of the time, slightly less than 15% of the time, like 14% or so. And that's a fairly significant. So that's something that we'll have to play around with to see. But I think generally just 5% recover of life on kill is a big deal for mapping. Really big deal for mapping, and I think people may use it just for that. Deerstalker does a little bit more damage at the cost of its life. There's a few things like that. A few things lose small life rolls and gain a better version of whatever mod they used to have. For Deerstalker, this is probably a slight nerf, but not necessarily a strict nerf or anything, but there's a bunch of other things that are getting that. Gorku is claiming that it has no base cooldown. Oh, that's really interesting. So yeah, Death Rush is a new item. I think if it's got no base cooldown, then and that's a champion feature, then that's going to be quite interesting. So yeah, if Islandfill's correct that you can't refresh it, but then once you lose adrenaline, you can pick it up again, that's going to make Death Rush really good. So you might have 60% uptime on it or something like that if you're mapping, and that will make Death Rush incredible for speed mapping. There's a clarification to adrenaline at the bottom. Thank you for that clarification. I may need to refresh for that, but I'll do that once we've gone through everything. And you get adrenaline mods from Megalomaniac as well. That's worth knowing too. Demon Stitcher is something that's interesting. So this is the set of gloves where you sacrifice 5% of your life to gain that much energy shield when you cast a spell. This is doubling down on that, and it's going to be 5 to 25 with a Divine Orb range there. As well as that, it's going to give you a lot more maximum energy shield and maximum life. The purpose of this item now is going to be Mohoxidal's Machination, the unique item from Ultimatum. Mohoxidal's Machination is something that rewards you for filling up your energy shield, and then you can then spend it all. Well, you then do spend it all. You don't have any agency over it. all that energy shield gets spent, and you get a massive buff to resistances for a little while. So Demon Stitcher has some interesting interactions with Mohoxidal's Machination, but you're going to want quite precisely divined ones that'll be based on your character. You might want 5% on some characters, you might want 7%, 8%, whatever it is that gets you from 0 to full energy shield. That's the amount of life you want to sacrifice. And it may be on some builds that you want 12, 15, 18% of your life as energy shield. Ultimately, with Mohoxidal's Machination, there's no defensive benefit to energy shield anymore, and so you generally don't want to have too much of it. But Demon Stitcher really does help you keep full uptime on Mohoxidal's Machinations, extra 5%, maximum resistances. So that's something to keep in mind as an option, but it is a very risky one, and you don't want to be casting very many spells. You want to be casting some of them, just not very many. Doomfletch is just becoming Doomfletch Prism. Diala's Malefaction was mentioned in chat earlier before. This is getting its numbers roughly doubled. Gems socketed in green sockets now have 30 quality, which is really substantial, and that applies to both skill gems and support gems, which are very hard to raise quality on normally. Plus 2 to the level of socketed gems in red sockets, and blue sockets gain 100% increased experience, which is a bit of a dud. You don't really want any blue sockets on this item, and you want to perhaps use the Leo Chroman item 50 times, taking the rarest colours, because I believe Diala's Malefaction, I have to check this, but I believe it has an intelligence requirement only, which would mean that it would bias towards blue sockets normally. I need to check that one out. Vondiker, I was discussing that before. I think, standard economy ruins itself all the time anyway. Recombinators ruined the standard economy too, just by existing. I'm looking forward to a shake-up. Really looking forward to a shake-up there, more than anything else. Sean Lindgren makes a good point. All blues for 5 ways. Yeah, that's a good option too. Now, we had Doedre's Scorn. This does not fit many builds, but adds 37 to 71 chaos damage is a lot, especially when it can be multiplied. It's per curse on the enemy. This is very, very niche, but if you are inflicting multiple curses and you are also then able to benefit a lot from chaos damage on hit, then Doedre's Scorn does a lot. Very niche item, but very, very powerful there. Object, I think Exalts will be cheaper than that. I think Exalts will be a tenth of a Divine. It'll be like 20 Chaos for an Exalt at most, and 200 Chaos for a Divine, possibly. But yeah, Doedre's Scorn. So adding Chaos damage with Bane doesn't help that much. Yeah, you get a little bit of damage from it, but if you are using Bane to initially apply curses, then you are doing something else to hit enemies, then that's where Doedre's Scorn comes in. So if you've got Bane with a Tri-Curse Bane set up on an Occultist, or even a Quad Curse setup of some description, then Doedre's Scorn will get you to do a lot more damage once you settle into beating up a boss. You'd be right, Islandful. So there's so it's even split. Number of other items are just doubling down on their mods. So Doedre's Tenure is getting more severe on the reduced cast speed, but getting more increased spell damage. Doomfletch is just becoming the old version of Doomfletch Prism. And then there's a number of other little things. Ephemeral Edge is being transformed. Now, fair warning, this item is not rare on live. I think this might be a very rare item. And this is something that looks like it could be a big change here. So this is being totally reworked. It's no longer the same item. It now adds 1 to 75 lightning damage and has attacks with this weapon have added maximum lightning damage equal to 20% of your energy shield. So if you want to go all in on this mechanic and sacrifice a lot of your energy shield, then you use this skill Energy Blade. If you're not willing to go all in on it, then you should use Ephemeral Edge, and it will do the same thing for you. It will just do it a little bit differently. But it is going to hit your maximum life where it hurts. So 25% reduced maximum life means that it's basically wiping out a full life cluster on the tree. So you'll have to deal with that. You're going to be a little bit squishier for it, but you're probably going to be tankier than if you used Energy Blade. All in all, this is a build around unique. It might be very, very rare, so don't definitely plan on it. This is something that will be really, really dubious. And that's a very good point that FS Forward is saying. it may be your current energy shield rather than your maximum. In which case, yeah, I think you're right, and that's going to be very difficult to play around with. Anyways, that's an interesting one. Fairgrave's Tricorn is getting an overhaul, a complete redesign really, that allows you to be touched by tormented spirits. This is only a meme item, but it's going to be a pretty good one. And then we have a bunch of stuff that's just getting changed that didn't really excite me all that much. And I'm just looking for the next thing that really did jump out at me as super exciting. I'm trying to remember what that was. So Heat Shiver, a lot of people were excited by this. I just don't know what's happening with Heat Shiver and Frostferno. So Frostferno is something that was the faded version of Heat Shiver, and it is actually not going to be available in the future, I think. So Heat Shiver is having all its mods changed. I really just want to see what both of these items look like if they're available anymore. Yeah, all of the Galesight series have been changed, but it does look like Frostferno is gone, unfortunately. So on Galesight, same changes are being made to the other two as well. Next thing that was of interest was, Hurumsaro we've already covered. Hari's Truth is picking up Culling Strike and also more crit multi and dexterity at the expense of losing some flat damage. Possessed Fish Time, yeah, Possessed Fish Time. That's a good point. And then we have Immortal Flesh is getting a big buff. Infernal Mantle was the interesting one. This is going to be socketed fire gems have +3 gem levels. This is a much more substantial increase. And this is something that I think we might see people try and use. But the drawback of 15% increased spell damage taken when on low mana is being really ratcheted up. It's now 100% increased spell damage taken when on low mana. So you need to not be on low mana for this to be safe to use. And that's going to be difficult to manage. But if you do manage to meet that requirement, then you're going to get a very powerful buff of +3 to the level of socketed fire gems, which you could then amp up to 7 with a lucky double corrupt. Don't know how rare this is going to be. And as someone's saying in chat, it allows awakened elemental focus and added fire to reach level 10. I think elemental focus is pretty good. And Unix Stream, yes, thank you for the pun. I definitely appreciate a good mana pun. That's the first one that I've seen there. So this one's going to be this will be quite interesting to see how this one works out. Calm's Sign is getting nuked, and I don't see why. I mean, it's a bit better very early in the game for purposes of Righteous Fire, but it doesn't need that. Kikuzaru is getting the smallest change of all. And Kintsugi is getting made better. It's going all in on what it's got, which is 35% less damage taken if you've not been hit recently. Previously 20%. And so yeah, this is better than it was, even though it's losing its life roll. It's going to be better than it used to be, and it is going to be a very, very, very solid item. This could be very chase. Lightning Coil is not just having its nerf reversed, but it's actually having its nerf... the nerf reversal is an extension. It's going to something more powerful in the old Legacy version. It's going to be 50% of physical damage from hits taken as lightning damage, previously 30. I need to take a very quick AFK. I will be back in 1 sec. All right, sorry about that. I thought I heard someone at the door. Okay, so we've got the Lightning Coil is getting buffed pretty hard there to beyond what it used to be before the nerf. And so that's a very, very substantial change. And that's going to allow you to go 100% physical damage taken from hits converted to other elements, and is going to be a pretty substantial defensive layer that you can scale up to 100% now, which is also possible with another setup. The other setup that you can use, and this is probably actually the best one, is the Cloak of Flame, which is 40% of physical damage taken as fire. That is both from hits and from damage over time. That gets converted with Cloak of Fire. You can use that in conjunction with 10% from a Purity of Fire Watcher's Eye, 20% from Chieftain Ascendancy, 20% from Dawnbreaker with Perfect Divines, and then 10% from a Warband's Helmet. That gives you 100% of physical taken as fire. then you can use the Purity of Fire Sublime Vision and also the Tempered by War passive tree notable to convert all of the damage you take from lightning and cold, in conjunction, also with Dawnbreaker, convert all of that into fire damage as well, and then you can wind up only needing fire and chaos resistances. You don't need physical mitigation, you don't need anything else except for that. So that one's particularly good, and something that's ridiculous. Medifrag's saying it may only be hits on the Chieftain part, but still, you're then going to take physical dots, just aren't that scary. Like, the worst of them is probably Uber Elder, bad goo on the ground. You can then treat your cold resistance and lightning resistance as dump stats. You can treat physical resistance as a dump stat, ignore it all, and just go nuts with that. Lightning Coil doesn't quite let you do that, but there are other setups that will let you get 100%. And then at that point, again, you can just completely ignore anything to do with physical damage that you're taking. It's all elemental damage, and you can mitigate that via other means. Particularly good in conjunction, I think, with Mage Blood. Obviously, a lot of things are good with Mage Blood, but Mage Blood does really well with that. Okay, so we're having a look at all the other sorts of things that are coming up here. There was a number of little things that didn't really jump out at me as super exciting. Ming's Heart is getting a very much refocusing here. So it's got the reduced energy shield and life on it are being ratcheted up a lot, but it's gaining 40 to 60% of physical damage added as extra chaos damage. This used to be 20%. This is a huge increase. And I think that this item is exciting now. I don't know if it's necessarily good, but it's exciting. FS, it's not that it's necessarily all that significant. I don't think it's a big difference. It's that it's converting to fire. Fire, you've got it can work with Dawnbreaker. That's the main reason that converting to fire is better than converting to lightning. So this is Ming's Heart. And then there's also the same stat happening on Obliteration down a little bit lower. So Obliteration is going to also gain 30 to 40% of physical damage added as extra chaos damage. There's something going on here. There is some sort of setup that you can make using a physical spellcaster build, using 1 Ming's Heart if you're not wanting to play Glass Cannon, 2 if you are, using an Obliteration, maybe even 2, and just doing staggering amounts of chaos damage this way. You could then potentially spell poison with it. This needs a lot of theory crafting to work, but I do think there's the core of an idea here. Someone wanted to discuss Montragol's Grasp here. So raised zombies deal massively more physical damage. So it used to be 80 to 100, it's now 100 to 125. And enemies killed by zombies hits explode, dealing 50% of their life as fire damage. Now, one thing that's very important, like that is a lot of explosion damage, but it's probably not as good in practice as Chaos Explosions from the Occultist. And the reason for that is that Chaos damage from Occultist can chain. You can make it so that when you kill one enemy, it can explode, kill nearby enemies, and their deaths can cause them to explode and keep going as well. That can't happen with Montragol's Grasp, because an enemy that's killed by this explosion is not killed by a zombie, and so doesn't trigger this. I think this is solid, but I don't think it's truly extraordinary. I think it's worth a look and worth trying, but I don't know that it's enough for zombie builds, unless zombie builds get a lot of other support elsewhere. I'll have to look into that. Harness the Void, I believe, is still the same. It's been moved, though. It is no longer the Trickster Ascendancy. It is now the non-Ascendancy node that is Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh exclusive. Yeah, Shiva's got a good point there with Replica Eternity Shroud would have a bunch of synergies with physical added as extra chaos. At least the Replica Eternity Shroud would work well with a build that's got that, but good luck getting Ming's Hearts as Elder influenced. There's no divination cards that will help you do that, really. I mean, Prejudice exists, but it's pretty rare. If you do make that, though, Blasphemer's Grasp is your friend. Don't forget that that item exists. It is really good and really underrated if you're using a bunch of Elder-influenced items. Unix Stream is asking, where does the damage come from on the Trickster? They get a lot of it from that Polymath. Polymath, I think, is essential. Yeah, Profane Bloom should trigger off your minions as well. Yeah, so Blasphemer's Grasp is an item that everyone's forgotten exists, and that is just way better than people give it credit for. And especially, yeah, for a lot of builds. It just does so much. Okay, so just having a look down here, Prism Weave and Replica Prism Weave are getting big numerical buffs. These are going to be nuts at low level. Absolutely nuts, especially the Replica one, where you're getting this rainbow damage added to spells, and it's just such high numbers for the level you'll be using this at. These are going to be fantastic, both of them, and they're definitely... They're leveling gear only, but they're very, very good leveling gear. Next, we have the Relicash's Impatience came up in chat before. So your minimum Frenzy, Endurance, and Power charges are equal to your maximum when you're stationary. This does not work the way people want it to work. So people have been talking about this with Discharge. It is my understanding that your minimum charges, you will jump up to your minimum charges when you're stationary, but you can't spend them. You can't spend them on Discharge because you can only go to your minimum. So if you cast Discharge, it'll do nothing. If you move, you should lose them all immediately. There's a good question that's been asked about races with leveling gear. There's always been a chance to get ridiculous leveling gear in a race, and I do think that there'll be a bit more RNG in the short races because of this. Like, Replica Prism Weave isn't an issue because you can't get it, but regular Prism Weave, for example, is something that will be more impactful in races than it is currently, and I think it's just going to be something people will just get used to. Replica Eternity Shroud may not be all that expensive because the item honestly isn't all that good. It's something to look at, but on the Wear Boots, Remove Boots, Discharge, you can do that with the current version of Relicash, but I think that as soon as you remove the boots, you are going to drop to your what your charges would be if you didn't have them on. Oh, if you move, you keep your minimum charges until they expire. That changes things then. In that case, yeah, Relicash's Impatience... we're going to have a look at this, but if that is the way that it works, then yeah, these things are going to be nuts. Like, does that mean you can just stop moving? Like, Relicash's Impatience is just basically you jump up to full charges as soon as you start moving, pretty much. That's pretty nuts if that's the case. Like, that'll mean that you've got 100% uptime on full charges in mapping. I can't imagine that will go live that will go live that way. That wouldn't be the case. Relicash with Flicker, I believe Flicker considers you to be stationary. Yeah, Russell raises a point that races often sort of lose concentration and like they get thrown out of their zone by a big drop. That's no longer really the case now. I think that what you saw at ExileCon was like a case where someone got tabular. Was it Tai? I thought it may have been Tai 23 that got tabular and got thrown by it and ended up doing badly as a result. I think that nowadays most of the races are familiar with like the more common of the powerful uniques that they could get. It was Tai, was it? Yeah, it stuffed him up at ExileCon, but I think people will figure that out. Oh, that's a good point. Mentat clarified, if your minimum frenzy charges are equal to your maximum, you can't spend them for Flicker Strike. Of course. Yep. Thank you for the clarification there. That's good to have that clarified. So Rainbow Stride is getting very much a big doubling down on the chance to block spells, and it's going to be one of the best sources of spell block in the game. Rainbow Stride plus Tempest Shield is going to be a lot of spell block, and I think this item is going to be really good for some situations. Interestingly, it's getting a nerf in movement speed. It's going from 25 to 20%, but the item overall is probably better. And so, yeah, lots of interesting stuff there. Just going down the other list, looking for the other things that jumped out as being really interesting. Rhyme Gaze. This is losing 30% increased cold damage. Oh no. It now has 50% to cold damage over time multiplier, previously 16 to 22%. This thing is much better than it used to be, even though some of its stats are being reduced. This looks like a really, 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 really strong item. Someone's mentioning Sappho's Frame in conjunction with Rainbow Stride. I do not like Sapphire's Frame at all in the current state of the game. I do not recommend them anymore because physical attack block is too important for defense. I don't like Sapphire's Frame. I'm not going to recommend Rainbow Stride and Sapphire's Frame, but feel free to take it, succeed with it, and prove me wrong. There'll be spots where it's good. Like, it'll be good against, say, the Feared, where most of the damage that's coming in is from spells. So you could conceivably use it for farming the Feared, but I don't think it's very good in general, that setup. So we have Sapphire's Frame is getting, a doubling down on it, like just better stats than it had, but I think the drawback is too big to use. Shaper's Seed is having all of its mods doubled and it's still bad. That should say something about how bad that item is. I do not think it's any good. Chevron's Revelation, one of the rarest uniques in the game, it is getting its main stats more than doubled, and I still don't know that this is going to get great. This is going to be great. Rat's Cage was the chest armor that I misread when I was doing the original thing. When I was doing the original video, I misread this as being the Rat's Nest, the helmet, and I was really excited by it. So this is getting a bunch of extra life on it, but 100% of fire damage from hits taken as physical damage, I actually think that is usually a drawback. I don't really like this because it's fire damage from hits only. You still need fire resistance, and yeah, I think the drawback's too big on it. To be honest, I don't see myself using it. And then we have so the question on what happens to old copies of uniques in standard. Mostly they will go legacy, but you can divine them. Remember that divine orbs will be more expensive in the future, but you can divine them into whatever the new version is in general. You can get unaffected by ignite object like no other, but there's other sources of fire damage over time as well. There's the searing searing bond. There's a couple of sources of searing bond from enemies. There's the scorching ray totems that some monsters use, and there's a rogue exile that has righteous fire. So there's a number of sources that are not ignite as well. So I think it's pretty dubious overall. I think in general. I think that these days, if you build super tanky, you can be stationary, but most builds don't go that tanky. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that will mess you up if you're trying to, manage to make Rat's Cage work. I just don't see it working. I'm sure someone will find a way to make it work, but I don't see it myself. A number of other little changes that are coming up. Southbound is doubling down on doing a lot more cold damage and being a lot better at freezing things, as well as having its existing mods. Next, we have two of the most interesting of them all. Storm Charger, very common unique item that is getting a massive numbers buff. So this is going to be one of the most Divine Orb sensitive items around, and depending how rare it is, if this item ends up as a common unique, you're going to see a lot of people buying these with bad rolls to use the 3-for-1 vendor SP. If you see them, if they're expensive, then they might get divined a bit. 1 to 40% movement speed is a big roll, but the big rolls on it, the high rolls on it are going to be great. But the big mod that matters is 1 to 50% increased effect of lightning ailments. That is huge. If you were to get say 37 and 46 on this, then you've got a ridiculously powerful set of boots in a specific niche. I think these will actually be used. They're not usable at the moment in the current game. So next we're going to go through Sunblast. This is one of the biggest changes of all. No longer has increased trap damage or regen rate. Instead, skills which throw traps throw up to 3 additional traps, which I believe to mean that if it would throw 1, it throws 4, unless it's a cooldown trap, in which case it uses all of the available traps up to a maximum of 4. Throw traps randomly around targeted location, and traps cannot be triggered by enemies. So you therefore need to further reduce your trap duration, and there's a number of things making that harder. If you can still get Sunblast to instant, then this is going to be amazingly good. If you can't get it to instant, it's going to be clunky and bad, but do enough damage that it can't be ignored. We're going to have a look at this. Shock is not capped at 50% anymore. There's a lot of ways of getting it well over 50%. You can now get 100%. Oh, Sunblast has been updated again. Okay, so let's just hit the refresh at this point then on it. Good, we got away with doing that safely. I wasn't sure if that would work or not. So let's jump down to our unique items again, and we just looked at Sunblast. Yeah, there we are. So 65 to 75% reduced trap duration. So thanks for the clarification as to that. So if you can get that to if you can get that to 99% or 100% reduced, it's going to be nuts. I don't know that you can. I have to have a look and see how reduced duration support works there, whether that works with traps or not. I have a feeling it doesn't. Alberon's Warpath got a change as well. Okay, let's go and jump up to Alberon's Warpath for a sec. And so that's... Oh yeah, I think we discussed that one earlier. I think that one was changed at the time that I got to it on this video, on this stream. So yeah, Sunblast is looking interesting. If you can get that, if you can invest to make this 99% or 100%, it's going to be really good. If you can't, then this is going to be so much damage it can't be ignored, but also something that no one ever wants to do. We'll have a look around and see what we can do with it. So Thief's Torment is getting a substantial buff. It's getting just a bunch of extra resistances, which are kind of important on it because it's one of those items that gives a lot, and you do need to get them somewhere. Thief's Torment, really good while leveling. Yeah, and Shock is just, it scales so much higher than it used to. Really interesting change to Thousand Teeth Timu. This is bad but funny. It now reflects up to 10,000 physical damage to attackers on block, and that's going to not be actually any good. It's still not even necessarily going to one-shot weakest enemies at endgame, but it is going to be funny. Just for a bit of a meme. This will be the sort of build that someone will make a video of them going AFK in the early waves of the Simulacrum and just letting this AFK it for them, but it's not going to work in even the middle waves, let alone the later waves. Thunderfist is the big one. This is the thing that I think is going to be one of the most improved items here, and that is that it's getting socketed gems supported by level 30 added lightning damage. That is an enormous amount of added lightning damage. That is just phenomenal. And you're going to want to use Shock Nova, which inflicts shocks all the time now if you hit the enemies right, and also the new Overcharge support. This is going to let you inflict those, not those 50% shocks anymore, but 90%, 100% shocks, and that's going to be tremendous damage. Tremendous damage. Corsica, the days of left side builds seeking out 100% spell suppression in hardcore are over. Hardcore players will be using uncapped spell suppression, and they'll manage perfectly fine with it. You're not going to sacrifice all of the life necessary in order to get 100% spell suppression. You'll instead get like the 60 or 70% you can get easily, and you will make do with that, and then you will build tough enough that you don't get one shot by those 30 to 40%. And that'll be the way to go. I don't think people are going to go for 100%. You have to like sacrifice 3 or 4 life clusters for it, and you don't want to do that. Medifrag, there's so many, all of the sources that used to replace your shock cap with something higher, like 60%, now add to it. So they all stack now. All those things sort of stack. People may try to cap, but I just don't think it's going to be something that people can do early enough in progression anyway. Maybe they do it at very, very, very top end, gear-wise, but we're talking about the time that you're already like, we're talking about after they're doing Uber Pinnacle bosses probably. And I think that you are going to be more susceptible to one-shots. Like, if you have a choice between 6,000 life and 70% suppression, or 4,500 life and 100% suppression, you're going to take the former because it's actually less one-shottable. That's the real problem. You're going to be one-shot more on the 100% suppression, and that's the sort of level of investment that's needed on the left side. Ruscalor's Patience. Let's just have a quick look at that. Someone's just mentioned in chat that it's something that they thought I had missed, and I had missed it. I did jump straight past it, so let's just have a quick look at what it was that was, where's the... Rascalor's Patience is now always freeze, shock, and ignite. Oh yeah, so that means that you always inflict those things. Yeah, you always inflict them, but the monsters will shake them off pretty quickly. Like, there'll be a use for the case for that, but I don't think it's something that's necessarily magnificent or anything. It'll have its niche uses. Our next exciting one was Vile Caress, but we've already discussed that in a past video. Then we have the next thing that jumped out at me was Worm's Molt. Just Worm's Molt's getting buffed, but it's being changed to level 41 requirement, and it's being set up as something that can be really good at early endgame, and it might actually stick around a while. Physical attack damage leached as life and mana modifiers are now 2%, so it's leeching 5 times as much, and you're able to leech 5 times as much here. It does a lot here. I think this is really interesting. Donovan, I need to see Heat Shiver, the actual item, because I'm getting Frostferno and Heat Shiver in my head confused. So I'll have to have a look at that. Yeah, I think Life Lover Norris, that Bringer of Rain rework, it's about the life going up more. I have to have a look at it, but I think the life is the big thing on it. Okay, so all Fated Uniques are being removed, and some of them are having their mods put onto the base item, and that's why I'm unsure about Heat Shiver, what it's actually going to do. And that's why I'm so confused. The Divination cards are being temporarily disabled and cannot be turned in currently, but there'll be they'll get changed at some point. Like, one of my Divination cards got crangled by changes to the Atlas, and GGG said just get in touch and we'll change it. So that ended up changing to an 8 mod Elder Guardian map is what I made it into now. So Heat Shiver currently, like, Heat Shiver is the version without +2 fire, +2 cold, but they're also saying that the special modifiers on some Fated Uniques have been moved to the base version. So it's just, I want to see some clarification on exactly what's going on there. All of the stuff related to Atlas passive tree, no support for Fated Uniques, is being removed, and it's being replaced by a pick your favorite master cluster. So there's a bit of that going on as well. Defense balance, this is all stuff that we discussed in the Balance Manifesto video that we had a couple of days ago. The Sky is Not Falling, I think I called it, or something like that. But basically, there's a number of changes happening that are, like, if you have Fortify on your build is probably defensively stronger. If you don't have Fortify on your build is defensively weaker, but not by much. And that's where they're going for at the moment with this overall change. And a couple of outlier cases are being nerfed, but not Determination. And Defiance Banner, as much as people have been saying Defiance Banner is dead, it's not. Defiance Banner is too good not to use. And yeah, too good not to use overall. So Minion Balance was the next thing. We also discussed that. We're getting a little bit more itemization, but not much clarification so far. So we really need the full list of all of the mods that can roll on those Convoking Rings, Convoking Shields, and the like. I do have a little bit of information from the press kit. Let me have a look at that. I'm just looking at that in the background here. If I do have anything really useful, Minion item, Bone Ring. Let's just see. How am I gonna? What do I do to get this? I guess I just get the path from it, don't I? Properties. There it is. Okay, let me just find this. I will open this in another browser, and then I should be able to find it. So Minion item, Bone Ring, Calling Wand, Spirit Shield. I can open these 3 and bring them across here. Is that working properly? Yes, that is. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Let's bring across the other 2 as well while I'm at it. Calling Wand and Spirit Shield. Oops, I didn't get that one right. That's just misplaced. How do I do that? That's like that, isn't it? Stupid PC sometimes. Okay, that's not in the correct spot. That's what we need. Okay, good, that's better. So now the stream can see the Spirit Shield first. So this here has Minion Life, a meaningful amount, Minion Resist, a meaningful amount, and +1 to the level of all Minion skill gems. This one is pretty significant, and I think that it's looking like it's pretty good. This is definitely, you're going to be using these on a Minion build. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. You're going to be using these. And I think that's going to probably remove things like Aegis Aurora from contention on minion builds. And so that's the first one. Calling Wand, this is the lower level version. This is minion crit strike chance, minion damage. And it's, yeah, just generally an okay wand. Probably not as good as a Convoking Wand. Well, I mean, I don't see any reason that it's not going to be as good as a Convoking Wand. We'll have to see. Again, we need the full mods for it. Seismic Trap has been nuked. So Omega Maximus, Seismic Trap has been nuked. And if you liked Seismic Trap, you should be playing Explosive Trap in the future. They gave it 30% less damage across the board, and that was a late change because they realized they'd under-nerfed it, so they've come across and fixed it. But yeah, like someone's saying in chat that Aegis Aurora is still a must-have on minions. I think that just so much of your damage is going to be tied to these items that you, in hardcore maybe, yeah, you'll still go Aurora, but Aurora is going to be a real hurt in damage compared to using a wand. Wands are going to do great. Explosive Trap is really good. It's going to be something, if I do a league start practice, it'll be Explosive Trap probably. Notice that these bone rings, you can wear 2 of these, and this has a lot of fire resist, a massive amount of lightning resist, like 66% to lightning resistance, which is something that you can't normally get in the core game. I don't know why we've got so much on it. I don't know how that's happening. That's an interesting little teaser, but this is from GGG's press kit, and so that stands out to me as, are they buffing the top rolls there, or is something else going on? But then you've got minion movement speed, minion damage, big numbers on them. You're definitely using these. Like, the days of using unset rings on minion builds are just gone, kaput. You'll never use one of them again because these are too much better. So that's the various itemization stuff that we have so far, which is actually pretty limited, but I think that minions are looking pretty solid there. Influence minion shields with life gain on block. Yeah, that's a very good point Medifrag's making. That's the end game solution. +1 and then an influence mod for life gain on block would be nuts. Yeah, I agree with Russell on that. Definitely, it's a good decision to make it so that it's considerably better, considerably worse overall. Thank you, FS, for clarifying that on window of opportunity for skill effect duration is a good solution to get the remaining reduced duration for the traps. No, you don't need those sockets anymore. A lot of the, like, you're just simply going to make do without them because the opportunity cost of using that socket is too high. Skill effect duration is not trap duration. Okay, there we go. That's a clarification there. So yeah, you are just going to make whatever sacrifices are necessary to fit them because they are better than unset rings are. So you just go, okay, I've got one gear set where I have an extra gem slot, and I have another gear set possibility where I don't have that gem slot, and my character is better. So that's going to be the way you'll go. I don't think anyone's going to. I don't think that anyone is going to use unset rings again, like except for people that follow an out-of-date guide. They're just dead for minion builds. Like you can't give up that much damage just for some utility skill, for some utility gem. It's the same way that people give up, like let's say, people don't use unset rings on a self-cast build because they're giving up something that's worth more than whatever they could put in there. Even though they could put some genuine utility skill in the unset. They don't do it. So there's a bunch of other stuff that we knew about in balance. So Corpse Explosion skills. Fire Trap is getting its... it's the 28% nerf. We knew about that. And this is the changes to non-seismic trap duration traps, which are meant to be a wash, but I don't think are. I think this is actually a nerf to Lightning Spire and to Flamethrower Trap. Yes, Wave of Conviction can shock, yes. There are not 5 base minion rings object. There are 5 new rings in total, one of which is a minion ring. One of which is a minion base. And then there's, so there's a whole bunch of stuff there that, there's a bunch of new stuff that's Kalandra exclusive at the moment. Seismic Trap getting 30% nerf here, which is exactly what it needs. 30% nerf and these damage application nerfs. This is reversing Seismic Trap to being as useless as it was before it got overbuffed, I think, which is long overdue. They could have nerfed it less if they'd nerfed it earlier, but because they waited so long to do it, they've had to go in the heavy-handed way and just make sure the skill is dead. Because no one wants to see another league where Seismic Trap is the only viable builds. I think Gazzy will change his mind on that. Gazzy will just have to adapt. There is no way anyone can. There is no way anyone can make a minion build without this power. It's like you're just getting so much. I just think they'll adapt. They'll test it out in Path of Building and they'll be like, oh, okay, I can have the old unset ring, or I can have movement speed on my minions, which is like a whole support gem worth of power, and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's no way you're going to keep with the old system. Explosive Arrow is known. This is all known. All sorts of known stuff. Unless there's more changes on the... I don't know if there's any other changes here. The other thing is that a lot of the support specters have been nerfed. The most powerful support specters have been nerfed, which means they're less essential. And that's another big deal with minions. And yeah, minion resists have been taken away elsewhere. Bone rings make that up. So they're basically providing you with the survivability for your minions. And if you don't use them, you'll end up just, you'll lose your damage when your minions die. So we're just having a look. Scourge Spectres are back, that is true. So if you can keep them alive, they'll be really good. Blood Sacrament from one of the unique items from Ultimatum is getting a bit of a change. I just want to treat this as though it's a new skill. It's been out of the game for so long that we'll have to decide how it feels. Juggernaut was all known. These changes were all known. Unique items. Crystallized Omniscience is getting nerfed and is still going to be the best item in the game for builds that can use it. Melding of the Flesh is getting nerfed, but is still going to be best in slot. And what else is there going up here? There's... yeah, the new mechanic has a fair bit of synthesis in it. There's a fair bit in like it in synthesis. Here's that stuff about effective shock. So a number of weapons are getting the shock effect that have had previously. These weapons deal 300% more shock. They shock as though dealing 300% more damage. That mod is changing to only apply to hits from that weapon. That's Voltaxic Rift and Brain Rattler. And then the Lightning passive skill mastery that increases effects of your the shock cap from 50 to 60% is now increasing the shock cap by 15%. And other sources also can increase this further. So with just this mastery, you're getting 65% shock cap, but there are other sources to get that higher. And that's why they're making it a big deal there. +4 amulets, Donovan, will exist in the league, and they will be very rare. And they also can't be mirrored. So, well, they cannot be further mirrored. They will be mirrored when they're created. So it's 50-50 chance to get one when you feed an amulet into the mirror thing, and it may have ruinous other mods on it as well. So yeah, I do think that there's a lot of potential with shock in this league. I think shock is looking really good. All well-known changes here, so nothing that's new. Just jumping through because there were a couple of things near the end that were new. And reduced trap duration. So these are currently only useful when combined with the Sunblast unique belt. So there's a number of changes to trap duration that are being changed around, and there's no longer going to be... Set and Forget is no longer going to have reduced trap duration. Instead, it's going to be trap increased AoE. So I think that Sunburst is going to be pretty much... I don't think you're going to be able to get the duration of your traps any lower than the base. Yeah, it's a good point Jonathan makes in chat that Lightning Arrow may be particularly good with easier access. Well, we don't know that we've got easier access to Asenath's chant. Asenath's chant might be extremely rare, so we'll have to figure that out. But I do think Lightning Arrow has some potential. Lightning Arrow tends to be a very mediocre league starter, though. It's something where it comes into its own once you get Headhunter. Really comes into your own then. Until then, it's really hard to do. And Now we have Molten Shell buff effect. This was a confusing thing. This is just a clarification that some Molten Shell enchants that were confusing people, that were terrible, are being removed. Essentially, this is just an improvement on the lab enchant pool by removing something bad. Val Breach is now able to drop from Breach Lords and areas open from flawless Breach Stones. So Val Breach was not dropping the way it was intended to be, and they couldn't fix it, so they put it somewhere else instead. That's going to be interesting. Yeah, Asenath's chant is now Asenath's mark. That's correct. Anyone know where to find the info on the new Ignite Poison support gem? Yes, I think I do have the link to that still handy. Let me just grab that for you. Copy that, and I will post that in a spot where I can post that in chat. That's what you're looking for, I think, Cupbird. That's the level 20 quality version of that. There we go. That's the adrenaline clarification. So adrenaline now cannot be gained while you already have it. So it's not intended to let you refresh it. And that's the thing that we were talking about with Death Rush earlier. So Death Rush, you get 3 seconds of adrenaline after you kill something, and then that has a cooldown. So you can't restart that until after you've had that going again. Recombinators can no longer be used on mirrored items. So this is a standard thing that is actually more about... it's more intended to stop mods being harvested from the new Kalandra League items. So this is being done immediately rather than at the end of this league to prevent people from getting some ridiculous stuff. Prevent people from getting ridiculous stuff by ripping items from hardcore, because that would otherwise end up dominating hardcore trade economy. They're now going to deal with that way. This is also going to reduce some of the power of existing recombinators, but only at the very top end. That's not really all that important. Monster changes, there's a couple of little changes to essences where some of the essences, this is the monster that is possessed by the essence. These were more powerful or weaker than intended, but they're only pretty small changes. There's nothing particularly massive there. And Permafrost now is no longer stacks with other sources of Vortex Ground. So a little bit of a nerf to the Permafrost monsters, but not a very big one. Magnum Opus Divination card is something that's pretty rare. That's the item level 100 synthesized item with 3 implicits. This is now able to grant all sorts of jewels. And then we have the Atlas changes. So the big things here are the map changes. Ancient City back, neither here nor there. Arachnid Nest, Arachnid Tomb, Belfry, Castle Ruins, Chateau, Colosseum, Crater, Defile Cathedral. Let's come back to Defile Cathedral in a sec. Dig, Excavation, Forking River, Ghetto, Leyline, Pen, Phantasmagoria, Pier, Plateau, Racecourse, Shrine, Silo, Stagnation, Self-Events, Vault, and Waterways. Some of these are big, some of these are not. The big thing here, though, is Defile Cathedral. This map has the tag blood_mage_boss, and this means that this should drop the Mage Blood Divination card, the Apothecary, and only in monster level 75 and up, but it should be able to drop the Apothecary from it. So there's a new map for the Apothecary in Defile Cathedral. That will have to be confirmed once the league actually starts and we get to explore it. Additionally, there's a couple of reasonable maps here. Pier is popular, even though I absolutely hate it. Plateau is popular, even though I absolutely hate it. And we have Waterways is a pretty reasonable map. Leyline from memory is pretty reasonable. Pen is one of the indoor maps that people tend to like if they like indoor maps. Belfry is another one that's pretty mediocre to solid. And we have Racecourse. Racecourse is actually pretty good. So there's a bunch of maps that are at the medium end. We're losing Basilica, which is bad, Bazaar, which is mediocre, Beach, which is good, Burial Chambers, which is good. This might be the first Atlas without Burial Chambers ever. Cage is going away, which is just a straight swap for Pen. They're basically the same thing. City Square is going away, which is a map that has been run so much recently. Core is one of the worst maps on the Atlas. Courtyard, actually, no, sorry, correction. Core is the worst map on the Atlas, and it's going away. Courtyard's going away. No one will mind that. Crystal Ore, I will miss Crystal Ore, even though it's an objectively bad map, but it's just a fun boss fight when you're undergeared at the start of a league. Desert Springs going away. That will probably make a lot of people happy, as that's such a long boss fight. Fields is going away, Glacier, a couple of the more popular, really open area maps. Infested Valley. Infested Valley makes me think, where is the Divination card, the Offspring, going to drop? I have to check on that. Ivory Temple, Lookout, Mineral Pools, Palace, Pit, Reef, Sepulchre, Sunken City, Tower is going away as well, so we're losing two of the best Headhunter cards. Toxic Sewer is going away, Tropical Island is going away, and Volcano. So there's a lot of good stuff is actually going off the Atlas, and less quality is being added. There's a few good maps that are being added, but it's also noticeable that a number of maps are not coming back that have been off the Atlas a couple of leagues in a row. No Haunted Mansion is actually a big deal because that also has the Defiled Cathedral / Crimson Temple / Crimson Township Blood _Mage _Boss map tag. So that's not going there. Chase Houser, yes, I do believe that Divines and Exalts will roughly swap in price. So I think all in all, this is... And also, the other map that's not coming back from memory, we don't have Primordial blocks at the moment. And that's got a hideout attached to it. So there's a couple of hideout maps that aren't coming back as well. Haunted Mansion will be revolutionary when it comes back just because of that Apothecary. But we don't currently... But yeah, it looks like there's a few good things in here, but it's going to be a slightly worse map pool than last up. Best skill for Trickster prediction? Really don't know, to be honest. It's going to take a lot of thinking about. Oh, chat has broken again on the stream, has it? Stupid thing. I wish that was... Hey, sorry, thank you for clarifying that was Crangled. That's fixed now. The Offspring used to drop in Stagnation. Okay, that's probably where it is. Yeah, Haunted Mansion has the hideout. So does Primordial Blocks. They've both got hideouts that are pretty good. Lightning Strike will be fine. The fix to Lightning Strike is not intended to be a nerf. It is a nerf if the monster is actively moving away from you. So if the monster is actively moving away from you, Lightning Strikes sometimes hit more than was intended. But if the monster is stationary, you'll do the same damage you do now. A number of changes to Divination cards, but nothing here that I think people will farm aggressively here. So there's a number of cards that have been shuffled around a little bit because they're no longer available in maps, but those have generally been found a new location. Kirak League mods, I discussed that yesterday, so that one's been covered. Venom Gaia is solid. Venom Gaia is nothing wrong with that at all. Venom Gaia is a really solid skill. The one I wish was a bit better was Cobra Lash, because it's fun. They feel quite similar, but Venom Gaia just does the job better. But there's people that have done the feared in solo self-found on Venom Gaia this league. Plenty of them. Some info on where the new skill gems come from. Some UI changes. The big one here is that the map device remembers your last map crafting option used. So remembers your last Kirak mod, which is going to be something that we will be very happy to see. It'll be automatically selected if available and if you can afford it. Bug fixes. So there's a couple of things that were letting you get around Maven's punishment are being fixed. That's going to hurt. Oh, yeah, good point. 2 Snuggle Cache clarification is good. Should just check 2 essences for 2C is not all that great. Abyss is better than we expected. Areas contain 2 additional abysses. That's better than we expected. Ambush is good. Snuggle Caches are good. 1 Blight. Yeah, the top 3 are not. The Legion, Blight, and Expedition are not. But Heist is really good to get 2 Snuggle Caches there. Yeah, that is good. That's a good clarification to raise because I'd forgotten that we didn't have that information yet. 2 Abysses for 3C plus a Gilded or Winged Abyss Scarab plus all the tree support is going to do a lot. And I think people are going to play around with that as a juicing method, especially when running maps like Crimson Temple and the Defiled Cathedral. Particularly Defiled Cathedral would be really good with that. The thing Brompton's raising about needing to be logged in for trade, this is a big change, and let's discuss that in a bit more depth, actually, because I think this is actually a quality of life improvement, even though it doesn't look like it. So this looks like a QOL nerf, but it is the opposite, and that's because it's going to severely decrease the ability for people to hammer the trade website with just ridiculous amounts of searches early in a league. You're not going to be able to do as much of that. It's going to reduce the amount of live searches people can use, and in doing so, it is then going to cause the thing to perform better. Yeah, Brian raises a good point. Heist could be even better because of the potential for unique reward chests to be better. We'll have to find out what's happening there. But that could be really interesting. Beck says there'll be more news next week, apparently. But yeah, we'll have to see. We just don't know how much rarer they're making uniques. If they're raising the rarity of, say, Chevron's wrappings to be as rare as Arakali's Fang is now, that's actually going to be a really big deal. Or if they made Arakali's Fang 4 times as rare, that's going to completely and utterly flood the... Sorry, that's going to completely reverse any flooding. Whereas if it's only 30% rarer, then we're not going to notice that because currently the market gets flooded for uniques really fast. We also don't know how much the Kalandra content is going to disgorge uniques. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can do there. Diala's Malefaction, a good comment in chat that it's going to be making alternate quality gems more useful early on. Lots and lots of options for here, but I do think that Gwennon's going to be strong in in trade, as is Rog. Rog is just going to be amazing in trade. He always is. But I think that one of my league start plans, if my goal is to get 50 Divine Orbs in week 1, given that now 50 Divine Orbs is the new 50 Exalts, then I think I'll be probably doing that through the use of getting to level 90 quickly, then using Gwennon and Rog to just create as many items as I can quickly. And yeah, maybe I'll get a Lucky Mage Blood, but even if I don't, then we'll find out how we go. We should get some good stuff early on. So there's a number of little minor things here, but there's a couple of bigger things as well. So Maven's Punishment is getting a fix that might actually be really scary. I don't know whether it's intended to prevent Flask Life Recovery. It doesn't currently. If it is intended to prevent Flask Life Recovery, then it's going to be horrifying. It'd be terrifying. But if it's not intended to prevent Flask Life Recovery, then it's just going to be a couple of corner cases that are going to get fixed. Fixed a bug where recombinators were ignoring modifier families in certain situations. So this is going to be the end for some of the things like triple physical damage taken as element helmets are gone. They're no longer going to be able to be made with recombinators even in standard. So that's something to keep in mind if you are a standard player and you want those things, get them quickly. Fix a long-standing bug where being frozen prevented any other action speed modifiers applying to you. This will be a corner case thing that will become relevant because of the Trickster nodes. Just got to find out exactly how that Trickster node works. Your action speed can't be reduced below 108%. And then we have, I'm just looking to see through here, fixed an issue where the effects of brittle and sapped ground were not affected by ailment effect. Okay, so brittle ground has been nerfed in this patch, sapped ground has been buffed overall, and so that may actually end up being something that people may actually use the sapped ground in future because of this. Yeah, there'll be some sort of fix, like Awakened POE Trade will come up with a fix for it. Hopefully it'll be ready day 1, but it may not be. I haven't really thought about that media culture. I don't know enough about Blazing Salvo. I've never played the skill, so I would just say I don't know enough about it to really say what's going on. Fixed a bug where taking self-damage from Bone Shatter would always crit you if hits against you had additional critical strike chance, e.g. if you were brittle. That's something I didn't know was there. That's going to be a killer for some people. So this is the one that people were talking about before with Lightning Strike. This hitting a single target twice from one attack. This is not what people think it is. It's going to mean that enemies running away from you were sometimes getting hit 3 times instead of 2. Now they're going to just get hit twice, but an enemy that's stationary will not be hit any more or less than it used to be. That's been clarified that has been clarified over on the POE subreddit by someone from GGG. Looking to see if there's anything else that's really big deal here. Monster Elemental Ailment Avoidance is now going to work with Scorch, Brittle, and Sap. I didn't realize it wasn't. What else do you have? Soul Thirst is getting fixed. No more can you remove Soul Thirst to do ridiculous stuff with another belt. Instead, once you remove it, you're going to lose all the souls you've been eating. And that seems to be pretty much about it here. Let's have a quick look through these changes here. Ah, yeah, we've looked at all of these changes, so yeah, we've discussed all of these points. There's to be permanent minions and follow you. So that's the only thing there. Awakened Arrow Nova support now causes supported skills to deal 15%. Awakened Arrow Nova support is getting a buff. Interestingly, Awakened Arrow Nova support is one of the rarest of the Awakened gems, it seems. So that's something that we're going to have to look into. Is anything happening to Scorch? No. So no, nothing seems to be happening to Scorch, except that Scorched Ground may now scale up with Element Effect as well. Alright, well that is all of the patch notes. This has ended up being quite a bit longer than I was originally intending the stream to be, but let's just do some last second questions if people have got them. Donovan, yes, permanent skeletons should be able to die, but then be easily resummoned. Skeletons are the easiest minions in the game to summon, so you can then just disgorge heaps more of them if you want. Note that I think that's only skeleton warriors. I don't think it will be skeleton archers or skeleton mages. They get that effect from Elbron's Warpath. At least that's my understanding of it. But yeah, I'm going to wind up the stream at this point, but with any questions people have got. Let's go for another 5 or 10 minutes with questions if people have got stuff. Are Timeless Jewels only for the ultra rich now? No, I don't think they will be. Remember, you can vendor 3 of the same one and get... You can vendor 3 uniques with the same name, none of them corrupted, and get back a new one of the same item that is fresh to be divined. So it'll be unidentified. You can then ID scroll it. And the number of Timeless Jewels that drop is really high. So I think you'll find that what will happen is that the unpopular names will drop in price a lot. So if you take, say, I think it's Ahuanawa for the Val one, there's 2 that are popular and there's 1 that's not. I think it's Ahuanawa is the unpopular one. That's going to be much lower value. Completely lost on what to start on, Ian. So am I. That's what the next few days are for. We'll come back in 6 days, and I'll probably have an idea as to what I want to start with. Fixed a bug where the overkill burning damage from Herald of Ash was not affected by modifiers damage over time multiplier. I didn't see that. I must have skipped past that line. That is a big one there. That is a big one. Hey, thanks, Russell. Does Alchemist Mark make Burning Arrow a decent skill to run from start to finish? I honestly need to think more on that. I'm really not sure. Peyton Dad, any party play implications stand out to you? Divine Orbs are not going to drop more in party play the way Exalts do. Or not in the sense that there's not so many divination cards you can scale. And so that's one thing that comes to mind. Piash, I'm looking forward to the new economy. Jonathan, do I think Lightning Arrow will be better to League start now? Doomfletch is just replacing Doomfletch Prism, so I don't think it's going to make much difference there. Ashish, yeah, the fusings should be pretty available. Tainted fusings, remember, are being nerfed. German, do you want meme or do you want serious? If you want meme, then try Frostblink Ignite using Bronze Lithe. J Knight, I know nothing about Flicker Strike, unfortunately. People think it's still good. Pedro is saying Lawweave somehow even more dead, except with Transcendence. Transcendence really, really good. Thoughts on early Atlas strategy? Follow what the races are doing if you're someone who wants to get to tier 16 real fast. If you are confident with spending a little bit more time in those maps, those tiers, then just set up whatever your mid-league Atlas plan strategy is. Object like no other. Do I think Orb of Chance will be more meta or better? I don't think so. I think Orbs of Chance are just such a hassle. Yeah, people will chance things. I don't think you're going to have enough Scouring Orbs to do much Scour chancing early on. The Toogler, does the rare changes kill Headhunter? No, it doesn't kill it. Less overpowered? Yeah, probably a little bit, but not much. It'll still be busted, I think. How do I feel about Spiritual Aid and the minion item changes? Really need to think on that one. Brandon, really good question though. I need to think on that extensively. Legend Dusties, doctors drop from Spider Forest, nurses drop from... Nurses I need to check. Tanner, I think that the farming... Yeah, I don't think you're wanting to bulk sell, but it's going to be a mess. Working out how Timeless Jewels work in terms of prices is going to be a mess in the future. Pedro's right that Forbidden Shaco is going to be more expensive to get the optimum ones, much more expensive. You're going to have a higher threshold for what you're willing, sorry, a lower threshold for what you're unwilling to roll over. Wonder how many Divine Orb div cards will be added next league? Probably quite a few in the next little while, maybe not immediately. What should you look out for when building a Lightning Strike Trickster without Omni? You still probably want to use Omniscience at endgame. You definitely want to use Omniscience if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, then yeah, you'll just make do with something else until then. Essence Claw, Lightning Strike, Trickster is going to need a lot of thought, really. How much Stone Golem total life was affected for More of Mischief? Ventrua, I think it was testing that build and seemed to think it looked pretty good. I think it was Ventrua that was testing it on stream recently for More of Mischief Ignites, and it looks like it's good. Are Harbingers still good with Exalts being less valuable? I think Harbingers are really badly hurt by that, and I think we'll probably see a lot less people running Harbingers content. They do give Divine Orbs a bit, though. They do give rare currency in general. Yeah, so Heat Shiver is granting 100% extra cold as fire against frozen enemies, 1% cold damage per chill on the per percentage point of chill on the enemy. That's got a lot of potential, and that's one I don't think I can answer on the spot, but it does look like it's something worth thinking on. So the reason that Jack was saying that Harbingers drop a lot of Divine Orbs is just that they seem to drop a lot of regular currency, like outright currency drops. We're not talking about shards. At least that's been my experience. They do drop a fair number of them, but it's not a staggering amount. Mark Selvey is asking about Righteous Fire Trickster. Yeah, that should work well. I think Inquisitor's probably still better, but it should work. And Stephen Jones makes a good point that item rarity affects currency drops now, according to the Q&A from Ziggy D. That is correct. I do remember that. So the currency will be, like, if you get a currency drop and you've got a lot of rarity, then there is a chance for that to be upgraded to a rarer type of currency. This may mean that people may actually value the Shaper mod that causes Socketed Gems to be supported by item rarity support. Object Like No Other raises that heist farming for trinkets with Divine could be meta. Yeah, it could be. And I think people will do that, but those trinkets are going to be very valuable. Expect a trinket that's 4% Regal to Divine to be like 50 to 80 Divines. Likewise, 1% Chaos to Divine will be in the same sort of ballpark range. They'll be expensive. Vendor's Gamble is being made more common. So there's a comment that it may be very expensive now. It is being made more common than it used to be, just the base item drop. And so you will be able to turn in 3 of them for the Vendor SP, 3 of the same unique, all not corrupted, to get back 1 that is unidentified. Herald of Agony discussion. I think the reason for Herald of Agony discussion is the increased minion move speed that's coming up from gearing. That's my first thought on it. I need to see more about the minion bone rings before I can really say much on that. So, having a quick look through everything else. More speculation based on the Exalt Divine changes. It's one of the things that it's hard to speculate on what the player base, how the player base will respond. Things will be very, very different. Things will be very, very different, yeah. But I'll definitely be placing anything chase that I get. Like, let's say I get a 5% Brass Dome drop. I think that's going to be a chase item next league. If I get it with 5% explicit, I'm going to list it for 4 Divine Orbs. I'm not going to list it for, 52 Exalted Orbs. Even though they may be equal in value, 4 Divine Orbs is going to be something someone may actually have. And it will also be something that's easier to offload. So, yeah, just like at the moment you list things in Exalts and Divines, you might accept them after negotiation. It'll be the other way around. You'll list things in Divines and maybe accept Exalts after negotiation. Blueprints blueprints start coming up a lot more with when you start getting heist on your when you start forcing heist onto maps now that we've got the heist option from the Kirak mods. Regals are rare, Carlos, yes, but they're less rare in heist than they are in other content. That's been my experience with them. Heist seems to have some deterministic regal drops that then can be upgraded to, well, Divine Orbs optimally or Exalt sometimes. Heist and Delve, for that matter, both seem to drop more Regal Orbs than any other content in the game. For Herald of Agony, it is level 31 is the breakpoint that is absolutely huge. So Herald of Agony has 27 to 28 and 33 to 34 are moderate breakpoints. 30 to 31 is a massive one. And that's something like a 21% more multiplier to damage, I think, from memory, going 31 to 32. I don't think that's going to change. Jonathan Walsh, the Divine Recipe, the 6-link item being vended is going to give you 20 fusings now. So that's the Divine Recipe, if that's the Divine Recipe you're talking about. Yeah, Shavok, definitely agree. 6 chaos for 2 heist caches is going to rain blueprints. It's I think you get a blueprint in about 8% of snuggle caches, so you'll get heaps of those. Toodler, there's been no clarification on what harvest crafts are being removed, except that we know that the formerly augments are becoming a null first, then augment. So it will be remove a random mod, a completely random mod from the item, then augment the appropriate type. I don't think that people are going to want to boss rush Sephiroth cards. Sephiroth drops from Dominus, the boss, but you can't juice him that much. So it'll be Villa map only, and I don't think it's going to come up all that much. Tabula will be worth 20 fusings, except in the first few days of the league. I'll probably be like 25 fusings for a bit, because it does have some utility. Delve, in my experience, drops a lot of medium currency and very, very little high currency. It's very rare to find Exalts, Divines, and Annuls there. I think you pretty much only get them from hidden opulence nodes, whereas just the loot explosion at the end of a node often drops out Chaos Orbs, Chaos Regals, Vals, that sort of tier of currency, especially Awakened Sextants. It drops so many Sextants there. Racecourse is back, that is correct. Racecourse is back. I would like Divine Shards now. I would like to have Divine Shards at this moment. Maybe making a league starter for heist farming. I don't know. I didn't do heist deliberately in 3.18 because I wanted to be fresh on it for another league. So I may well do a lot of heist in the next league, but we'll have to have a look. Yes, Pedro, it's going to be remove a random before the augment happens. I think Yogoho that there's going to be people going mad when the harvest stuff is revealed. Everyone that is a top 0.5% player is going to be furious because they are nerfing some of the top stuff. So we'll see. Francis is asking, is there any real change to maps that I recommend for farming given the change in currency? No, you want to farm the maps that either you can do fastest or that drop the best divination cards, and the best divination cards are going to be Crimson Temple and Defiled Cathedral for the Mage Blood card. So I think that's what people are going to do. Yeah, Jonathan, you're talking about the Divine Vessel. The Divine Vessel recipe is only going to be used in solo self-found and very, very little. And can you still Divine Orb the unique items like Ashes and Mage Blood? Yes, you can, but Divine Orbs are going to be a lot more expensive. So yes, you can do that, and you will do it with Ashes and Mage Blood, but you won't do it with middle tier stuff like Brass Dome. I don't think people are going to do much divining of middle tier stuff, and certainly not of low end stuff like the Atzeri Flask. That stuff you'll just use the 3-for-1 vendor recipe instead. Maui, no, 6 links now give 20 fusing orbs instead of a Divine Orb. So this is a major change to the economy. The Sephiroth drops from map Dominus and is quite rare. So Elijah, you're going to see much more Exalt slamming being done because Exalt slamming will be low opportunity cost now, and you'll also see a lot more optimization on high-end crafts. You're going to consider being Divine Perfect is going to be more important. Master Sarge, I don't like the Coruscating Elixir very much. I think it's a very, very difficult playstyle to make work. It's really difficult to make to get that working. How hard did a Slippery Jim facepalm? Jim knows. Like, Jim knew that whatever he put out was going to, with his 200,000 stack decks, was going to be obsoleted soon. So Miles, the endless heist strategies don't really interact much with alternate gems unless there's some changes to gem rewards in heist that mean that you can get alternate gems that way. But the endless heist strategies are very much about optimizing the very first 12 hours of the league. K-Bar asks where I estimate that the Exalt price range is going to be. 20 Chaos maybe. Yeah, I think 20 Chaos is an upper estimate. I think they'll be in the 8 to 20 range. I've got no idea where. Divines I think will be in the 120 to 250 range, and I don't know where. If I had to pick on the spot without looking in Path of Building, what 3 starters would I recommend? Okay, Explosive Trap on a Saboteur, Explosive Trap on an Inquisitor. I'm going to call it one build. So, but it can be either the Inquisitor or the Saboteur would be the first one I would suggest. Second one I would suggest would be probably Raider Lightning Strike. And if you don't want Raider, you can definitely give Trickster a shot for that. And third would be to go something completely different. I think there'll be a minion build, but I don't know what it is yet. So I'm just going to, broadly speaking, say minions without saying anything. Yeah, Juzo, the shock stuff I discussed a little bit, but I'm now just in a sort of final rapid fire question stuff, and then we're going to, I don't know, call it off. I don't think Exalts are going to drop anymore. It's just that players will feel that there's less of a cost to using them, because right now the best thing you can do with an Exalt is to use it to pay for crafting bench fees. That's now going to become the best thing you can do with a Divine Orb. You're just going to apply Exalts are just going to replace Divine Orbs in that situation. Exalts still have their uses, definitely, and they'll be used a lot on upgrading 3-mod jewels in particular. So if you get a 3-mod jewel with fossils, you can then slam it, and then you can decide, okay, yes, I'm going to re-roll this. If you hit rubbish, if you hit something mediocre, you can sell it, and if you hit something amazing, then you can use it. I think that's what people are going to do a lot. And yeah, there's going to be a whole bunch. Arakali's Fang looks like it'll be fine. Chemistic, there's all of those new minion items that are being added. Lightning Conduit, I really need to see gameplay footage of Lightning Conduit before I can really recommend anything at the moment. Yeah, I do agree. John Thomas has a good point there. Exalts are still used in crafting bench fees. Things like tier 1 physical damage to attacks, tier 1 spell damage are all going to be Exalts. C-Top, Tujen's divine cost is being increased to match that of Exalts. I think the Exalts were a bit of an outlier before. I think their cost rate from Tujen was artificially increased to be above what it would normally be. I don't know all the details there. The Covenant changes, my understanding of them, the Toodler, is that if the base cost of the gem is 30 mana, it's now going to become 30 mana and 30 life. I could be wrong. It could just be 30 life. Then the added chaos damage is getting buffed to the moon, and it's no longer going to work with auras particularly well. Best mechanic to get Divine Orb drops, really don't know that yet. I think that, obviously trade is the best mechanic for it, but we're going to have to figure that one out. Disco's asking about Harvest Divine Crafts. The answer is we don't know. And we're going to have to find that out. Given that the Leo Divine Craft is gone, it wouldn't surprise me if they're gone, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they stay, but they become rare only. We're just going to have to find out. Hits can't be evaded. Yeah, that costs 3 Exalts. That's a good point. That's another good use of Exalted Orbs that people will use, although popularity of that has fallen off a lot. Heist will be pretty good for farming currency in general, yeah, I think. Golomancer, Ventrua... So Brian is asking about Golomancer. Ventrua was putting together a More of Mischief build that he was playtesting over on Twitch. That may be worth a look. New money-making videos indeed will no longer be in Exalts per hour. They will now be in Divines per hour. At least on day one, we're probably still going to have them in Exalts per hour early on, because that's what the less enfranchised players are going to expect. But it will be Divines for people, anything that's aimed at more experienced players. I do think there'll be a bunch of new league starters, yeah. We'll have to work that one out. Yeah, minion ailment change is something people are sleeping on at the moment. We don't have enough details to be certain on it yet, but it looks like it's going to be really interesting. New reworks on 3 bows. So there was a rework on... Well, Doomfletch isn't really being reworked. I'm just trying to remember the other 2. Oh yeah, there were... nothing jumped. Death's Opus is getting +2 arrows. Nothing jumped out at me as extraordinary on the new bows, but then again, I haven't played a bow build in a while, so I'm not really the right person to ask on that. Panxum. But it's, yeah, like it seems like there's some interesting little stuff there. Forever, their Divines are going to be more useful than Exalts in the future. They're both going to remain their current rarities, which are equal to each other. The only unique bow I would consider using is Replica Infractum, and that is not a end of league build. That is this is what I want to use to start with. Roth's Reach got made better, but it's still very much leveling gear. I don't think you're going to use it long term. Anyways, I think I am going to call it there. May everyone's Valorbs have interesting results, and I will see you round. I will continue to put out videos as we get closer to the end of the hype season. So over the next few days, I want to try and put together a video covering my thoughts on potential league starters, but that's something we're going to have to work out. Thank you all for questions and comments and for turning up, and I hope you all have fun with the new league.